hands together for this great man. At over 90, Baba is still very much present to participate in the things that the Institute is doing. Please make it louder for this great man. Thank you very much, sir. May your days be long. We'll witness 100 years of you in the land of the living. Thank you. I also want to specially recognize our past registrar, Professor Ahmed Kumshe, FCA. Thank you very much for coming. Let me specially recognize in our midst the representative of the Director, Consumer Protection of Central Bank of Nigeria, our own Mr. Biodun Adeyemi. Please a round of. Also, we have very much present here in our Head of Africa Operations, UBA, Mr. Sanusi Mudasiru, FCA. I've seen all registrars of sisters' body very much present here. Permit me, because of want of time, may I humbly request all registrar of our sister body, professional body very much present. I can see CIBN, I can see other. Please, can you be upstanding and let's appreciate and recognize them. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, all the registrars. We have to just manage everything we have in here because of want of time. But as we progress in the program, I would definitely give more recognition, but we need to keep the ball rolling. And on this note, I want to specially recognize all the participants that are physically present here to come and witness the 2026 ICAN Economic Outlook. You are happy with yourself that you are here today. Can you put your hands together and celebrate yourself? And then let me give it out to those that are joining us virtually. We have over 3,000 people joining virtually to be part of this program. Can we put our hands together to celebrate this professional body, members of our great institute doing this? I will not conclude without recognizing a constituency I said I once belonged to. And that is all the district chairmen of our district society, holding forth the vision of those at the center to make sure that they replicate all this. You can't understand. They make sure they disseminate the information to the members at every point in time to partake in all the program. May I humbly request all the district chairmen present here in our midst to be upstanding for recognition. Please, can we appreciate those that are physically present here? And I know a lot of them across the globe, not just only in Nigeria, is joining virtually to be part of this program. Thank you very much. Have your seat. We acknowledge the great work that you are actually doing for us at the district society. On this note, we want to kickstart officially after establishing the protocol of program. But as we have other dignitaries coming, we will definitely give recognition to them. On this note, to have the welcome address, Tosin, let's have the invite.
We have a pleasure to welcome for the welcome address the second ICAN Vice President and Chairman 60th Anniversary Planning Committee. And I'm happy to call on Ajia Quincy Sokuratu Sebostime, MNI, FCA, for the welcome address. Please give her a resounding applause.
Good morning, everyone.
The Vice President is joining virtually.
The 61st President and Chairman of Council of the Institute of Chartered.
My Vice President.
The 61st President and Chairman of Council of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, Malam Haruna Mma Yahaya, MNI, PhD, FCA, The Chairman Body of Past Presidents, Sir Hubert Agbebiyi, FCA, the Chairman of Session, Alhaji Muhammad Hayatuddin, Chairman, Elpan Investment Services Limited, the first Deputy Vice President of ICAN, Dr. Etofolam Osuji, MNI, FCA, the second Deputy Vice President of ICAN, Chief Oye Akisurure, PhD, FCA, the immediate past President, Chief DCS Alaribe, the Honorary Treasurer, Mr. Tajuddin Olayinka, FCA, members of ICAN Governing Council present here and joining virtually, the Registrar and Chief Executive of ICAN, Mr. Larry Olasukomi, PhD, FCA, our keynote speaker and Chairman, Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, FCA, our very distinguished panelists, Dr. Biodun Adedipe, Dr. Chinyere Almona, FCA, Mr. Abimbola Ogudare, FCA, Mr. Shegun Ajayi Kadiri, MNI, professional colleagues, members of the public, gentlemen of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure on behalf of the President, Council, and the 60th Anniversary Committee to warmly welcome you to the January 2026 Economic Outlook of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. Your presence here today, both in person and virtually, affirms the confidence reposed in ICAN as a trusted voice in Nigeria's economic, financial, and governance discourse. This year's economic outlook is especially significant as it forms part of activities commemorating 60 years of ICAN's service to the Nigerian nation. For 6 decades, our institute has stood firmly for professionalism, ethical conduct, and the public interest, producing chartered accountants who continue to shape policy, strengthen institutions, and safeguard economic value across both the public and the private sectors. As we commence a new fiscal year, this forum could not be more timely. Nigeria is currently navigating a period of far-reaching fiscal and economic reforms focused on revenue mobilization, tax system restructuring, expenditure efficiency, and stronger public financial management. These reforms may be demanding, but they are necessary to restore macroeconomic stability, expand fiscal space, and lay the foundation for inclusive and sustainable growth. It is within this context that our team, ICAN at 60, Accountability as the bedrock for national development, assumes profound relevance. Accountability is the anchor that gives credibility to fiscal reforms. It ensures that tax policies translate into real public value. It guarantees that public resources are efficiently deployed, and it rebuilds citizens' trust in economic governance. Without accountability, reforms lose legitimacy. With accountability, reforms endure. Recent global indicators, including Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index, reminds us that Nigeria still faces governance and institutional challenges. These indicators should not discourage us. Rather, they should serve as a call to leadership, particularly for chartered accountants. As custodians of financial integrity, we carry a professional and moral responsibility to strengthen system, promote transparency, and uphold stewardship across all sectors of the economy. Today's program is designed to advance this virtual conversation. We are honored to have our keynote speaker, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, FCA, Chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, whose leadership sits at the center of Nigeria's current reform architecture. supported by our distinguished panelists drawn from policy, industry, and professional practice. I am confident that today's deliberations will yield particular insights on how accountability can translate fiscal reforms into tangible national outcomes. I sincerely commend members of the 60th Anniversary Planning Committee for their dedication, professionalism, and teamwork in delivering this important program. I also thank all participants for your continued engagement with ICAN and for your commitment to advancing the national interest. As we proceed, I encourage us all to listen attentively, engage constructively, and contribute thoughtfully so that together we can help chart a clearer path towards a more accountable, resilient, and prosperous Nigeria. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and I wish us a most productive and impactful session.
I'm sure we can do better for our Vice President and the Chairman of the 60th Anniversary Planning Committee. Thank you very much, my Vice President, for that welcome address. We've heard it. We all play strategic role in the new transformation that the country is actually about to enjoy. And as chartered accountants and professionals, we should play our role, diligently to bring accountability to bear. It's with that we can have so much confidence in some of the things that we're doing and reduce the trust deficit that the citizen already have in the government. Once again, thank you very much, Vice President. While the Vice President was about to commence our welcome address, we have worked in our own keynote address. The Chairman, Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform, put it together for Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, FCA. Is that the best you can give the man? He can decide to. I'll make sure that we have another reform starting immediately now. That is what the prof will always do. Thank you very much, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. Permit me to also recognize the women wing of our great institute, the SWAN, under the leadership of Mrs. Blessing Ogo. Please a round of applause for her and all the SWAN. Up SWAN. Up SWAN.
Women of integrity.
Thank you very much. Keep preaching the word everywhere you go. I want to give this special recognition to the Vice Chairman of the 60th Anniversary Planning Committee that has been working with the Chairman of the Planning Committee. Let's put it together for our own Elder Benga Omidiji, PhD, FCA. Thank you very much for the great work that you're doing. On this note, we've heard the welcome address from the Chairman of the 60th Anniversary Planning Committee. We want to have the opening remark from the 61st President of our great institute and the Chairman of Council. May I humbly request our President, in person of Malam Aruna N. Yaya, MNI, PhD, FCA, to be upstanding as we take his citation. Technical.
In every generation, a light rises, one who dares, who leads a mark that time cannot erase. We honor such a man, a steward of integrity, a builder of bridges, and a servant leader of uncommon distinction. On March 27, 2025, the Governing Council of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria unanimously elected him as its 61st president, a vote of confidence in both his vision and his record. Born on February 20, 1962 in Bida, Niger State, Dr. Haruna Umma Yahaya's formative years were guided by values of education, discipline, and diligence. He obtained his primary school leaving certificate from Masaba Primary School in 1974 and his grade 2 teacher certificate from Government Teachers College, Paiko, in 1981. He earned a BSc in Accounting, second class upper, from Bayero University, Kano, and followed with a postgraduate diploma in Computer Science from OAU in 1989, a MBA from Ahmadu Bello University in 1999, and a PhD in Accounting from IBB University in 2025. His pursuit of excellence also led him to the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, NIPSS, where he earned the MNI title and executive programs at Harvard, Hero Money, and before moving into finance during his NYSC with Home Developments Limited, a subsidiary of NNDC. He later served with the National Universities Commission, Nigeria Merchants Bank, and New Africa Merchants Bank, acquiring expertise in financial planning and corporate finance. He rose through the ranks in professional practice as audit manager at PKF Kaduna, and later as head of finance and systems at Intercity Bank. At FSB International Bank, he was assistant general manager and financial controller, overseeing strategic reforms. In 2001, he founded Haruna Yahaya & Co., a respected indigenous audit firm affiliated with MGI Worldwide. With branches in Mina, Abuja, Kaduna, and Lagos, the firm has serviced clients including international development organizations, financial sector institutions, subnational governments, federal institutions, non-governmental organizations, regional commissions, private sector. As Executive Director of Finance at Upper Niger River Basin Development Authority from 2006 to 2013, he reformed budget processes and championed grassroots access to public resources. As chairman of Edumana Microfinance Bank, he extended credit to undeserved communities. Since 2011, Dr. Haruna has been an active member of ICAN's Governing Council, serving on over a dozen key committees, notably Chairman 2017 Annual Accountants Conference Committee, Chairman Professional Exams Committee, 2021 to 2022, Deputy Chairman Corporate Finance and Forensics Faculty. His leadership has driven innovation, strengthened ethical standards, and advanced educational reforms within ICAN. Beyond the Institute, Dr. Haruna has made notable contributions on the national stage. He served on the Compliance Subcommittee of the Securities and Exchange Commission from 2006 to 2011. He was a member of the Financial System Strategy 2020 of the Central Bank of Nigeria and currently serves on the Technical Advisory Committee of the Federal Inland Revenue Service from the year 2023 till date. Most recently, he was appointed a member of the Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee, underscoring his stature as a trusted thought leader in Nigeria's economic planning. He is also the vice chairman of the Nigeria-British Chamber of Commerce, Abuja chapter. These appointments reflect his reputation as a respected reformer and policy advisor. Dr. Haruna Umayhaya is also a board member of both the Association of Accountancy Bodies in West Africa, ABWA, and the Pan-African Federation of Accountants, PAFA, where he contributes his wealth of experience and expertise to the advancement of the accounting profession across West Africa and the African continent at large. His active participation in these boards underscores his commitment to fostering regional integration, promoting high standards of professional practice, and driving strategic initiatives that enhance the global relevance of the accounting profession in Africa. Dr. Haruna's true legacy lies in empowering people. In 2016, he launched the Haruna Yahaya Foundation, providing scholarships for underprivileged students to write the ATWA exams. His mentorship has produced dozens of chartered accountants, and his personal philanthropy includes donating office space for ICAN-ngr and District Society Secretariat since 2010, creating a student reading facility in Minna, and sponsoring ICAN grassroots activities and infrastructure. Beyond the profession, he promoted youth development as chairman of the Niger State Weightlifting Association and led microfinance initiatives for women and rural entrepreneurs. As a regular facilitator with the Institute of Directors since 2015, Dr. Haruna has trained hundreds of boardroom leaders. He also contributed to academic literatures with publications that effectively bridge theoretical frameworks and practical applications, including Moderating Effect of Board Gender Diversity on Relationship Between Sustainability Reporting and Value of Listed Non-Financial Firms in Nigeria, 2025. Whistleblowing Policy and Corruption in Nigeria, 2018. Computer-Based NUC Grant Allocation Systems, 1989. His colleagues describe him as wise, humble, principled, and insightful. These are qualities that define his leadership. Dr. Haruna Yahaya is happily married with children and grandchildren. Dr. Haruna Yahaya embodies the ideals of ICAN, competence, character, and commitment to national progress. His ascension to the presidency is not merely ceremonial. It is symbolic of a future built on values, vision, and verifiable impact. Today, as ICAN enters its diamond year, Dr. Yahaya leads not just with credentials, but with credibility. In his steady hands, the future of the profession shines bright. I am deeply honored and profoundly delighted to present to you a charismatic leader, a visionary thinker, an inspirational builder, a chartered accountant of global substance and local soul. Ladies and gentlemen, let us rise and honor a man whose light leads us forward. Dr. Haruna Umar Yahaya, BSc, MBA, PhD, MNI, MIOD, MNIM, FCTI, FCA.
I'm sure we can do better than that for the 61st president. And on that note, may I humbly invite him as he takes the podium for the opening remark.
Let's be seated, sir. Let's be seated. The chairman of this session, my mentor, my boss, Alhaji Muhammad Hayatuddin. You hear in the citation FSB. He is the FSB. The chairman body of past presidents, Abat Agbebi, FCA, the vice president of the institute, Ajia Quinsley Segosime, MNFCA, the first deputy vice president, Dr. Etofolan Osuji, MNFCA, the second deputy vice president of ICAN, Chief Oye Akisulure, PhD FCA, the immediate past president, Chief DCS Alaribe FCA, the honorable treasurer, Mr. Tajuddin Olayinka FCA, my distinguished council members present here and those joining us virtually, the registrar chief executives, the keynote speaker, Professor Taiwo Oyedele, Mr. is a professor of taxation. The panelists, Dr. Biodu Adedipe, Dr. Chinyere Almona, FCA, Mrs. Abimbola Ogundare, FCA, Mr. Shegu Ajayi Kadiri, MNI, the royal fathers, His Highness Mohammed Sanusi II, CON, Emir of Kano, ably represented by Sariki Shanu Kano, Alhaji Shehu Mohammed, our own FCA, the friend of the Institute, who is always available for us anytime we knock on his door, the Alara of Ilara, His Highness Oba, Dr. Olufolarin Ogunsawo. You're welcome, sir. Professional colleagues, members of public, gentlemen of press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning. I'm delighted to welcome you to the 2026 Economic Outlook of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. This is not just another annual gathering, it is a deliberate moment, one where insight meets responsibility, where professional judgment meets national destiny. This edition of Economic Outlook holds special meaning. It is convened as part of the activities marking the 60th anniversary of our great institute, a diamond milestone that invites not only reflection, but more importantly, demand leadership. At 60, ICAN is not looking back in nostalgia, it is looking forward with purpose. We meet under the theme that speaks to the very soul of sustainable progress. ICAN at 60, accountability as the bedrock of national development. I thank every one of you for honoring our invitation and for lending your voice, your experience, and your conviction to this important national conversation at a time when Nigeria navigates profound economic change. In 2025, Nigeria economic showed clear sign of stabilization, with real GDP growth rising above 4% in the second quarter, driven by renewed momentum in manufacturing, trading, and services. Inflation, though still elevated, eased toward mid-14% range by year end, reflecting tighter monetary policy and improving supply conditions, with the expectation of further moderation in 2026 if fiscal discipline is sustained. External buffers strengthened as foreign exchange reserve rose to multi-year high, supported by stronger export performance and foreign exchange market reforms. While trade and current account balances returned to surplus, at the same time, private sector resilience was evident as Purchasing Manager Index PMI hit 5.6 points, showing a strong expansion in economic activity. This signally improving business conditions. Together, these indicators point to an economy that is regaining balance and credibility, but one whose progress remains fragile and must be safeguarded through discipline, transparency, and accountability. Accountability is not merely a governance ideal, it is an economic imperative. As Warren Buffett once observed, it takes 20 years to build a reputation, and it will take only 5 minutes to destroy it, unquote. The same is true of nations. Evidence across the world consistently shows that countries with strong institutions, credible oversight, and transparent systems outperform those burdened by weak governance and impunity. Despite laws, reforms, and oversight frameworks, gaps in institutional enforcement, persistent corruption, and weak consequence for misconduct continue to erode public trust. The mismanagement of public resources and adequate financial transparency undermine reforms outcome and slow economic transformation. These weaknesses create a cycle of distrust, and no economy can grow sustainably when trust is in short supply. This is precisely why ICAN roles matter. Since 2017, our institute has championed ICAN Accountability Index, ICAN-AI, a practical data-driven benchmark for fiscal transparency and public sector performance. Through this initiative, ICAN has demonstrated that accountability is not a rhetoric. It is a measurement, disclosure, and professional courage. As we look ahead the next 6 decades of our existence, this commitment will remain central to our relevance and our impact. Today's economic outlook gives us a steward of national economy, a real opportunity not merely to diagnose problems, but to interrogate and provide workable solutions. It challenges us to ask how leadership is translated into results, how ethics are converted into prosperity, and how institutions can be strengthened to serve Nigerian people better. As Kofi Annan once reminded the world, good governance is perhaps the single most important factor in eradicating poverty and promoting development. The truth still holds. I'm deeply grateful to the chairman of session, Alhaji Mohammed Ayatuddin, the keynote speaker, Professor Tayo Oyedele, FCA, our esteemed panelists, Dr. Abiodun Adedipe, Dr. Chinyere Almona, Mrs. Abimbola Ogundare, and Mr. Shegun Ajayi Kadri, MNI. Thank you for bringing your expertise, your candor, and your commitment to this national discourse. I encourage every participant here in the room and those online to engage fully, ask questions, share bold ideas. This is necessary as the quality of our conversation today will shape the quality of our outcomes tomorrow. Let me also appreciate the Vice President of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, who is the Chairman of the 60th Advisory Planning Committee, Ajia Quinsley Segosemi, MNIFCA, and members of the committee for curating this impactful program as part of our Diamond celebration. Our prayer is that the impact of ICAN will make in the years ahead will far exceed even the proud legacy of the past 60 years. Thank you for your attention, and God bless.
I am confident that our 61st President and Chairman of Council deserves more than that applause. Thank you so much, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. And to take us further in this economic outlook, would like to take the Chairman of Sessions address. And may I humbly request that our Chairman of Session, Alhaji Mohammed Ayatuddin, the Chairman, Alpine Investment Services Limited, be upstanding while we take his citation. Please put your hands together for him as he does that.
Alhaji Mohammed Hayatuddin is the founder and chairman, Alpine Investments Limited and Arabina Energy Resources Limited. He possesses a BSc in Economics from Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, and has attended various leadership and management programs at Harvard Business School, London Business School, and INSEAD. With over 40 years of experience, Mohammed has extensive experience in corporate transformation, strategic planning, and investment management. He was a pioneer managing director and later chairman of FSB International Bank PLC, where he worked from 1990 to 2004, successfully leading the turnaround of a distressed government-owned savings institution into one of Nigeria's top-performing commercial banks. His leadership at FSB positioned the bank amongst the best 6 in the country with consistent profitability and a reputation for value-added financial services. He also served as the Group Managing Director and Chief Executive of the New Nigerian Development Company, NNDC, where he started his career and worked from 1979 to 1988 in Nigeria's largest diversified holding company. At NNDC, he oversaw a portfolio of over 145 subsidiaries and associate companies, introduced formal strategic planning, and led successful divestitures and new business development initiatives, in the course of which the balance sheet of the group was expanded significantly. Mohammed has deep knowledge of Nigeria's economic landscape and has served on numerous boards and a host of endeavors in Nigeria's public space. He was chairman of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group for 2 terms and played a key role in shaping national economic policy through his involvement in Vision 2010, the Presidential Advisory Council, and the National Council on Privatization. He has served as chairman or director of several leading companies across sectors, including banking, insurance, manufacturing, ICT, and aviation. His current board roles include chairman of Inlax Computers Limited and director of 7up Bottling Company. Mohammed is highly regarded for his strategic insight, governance expertise, and ability to lead complex organizations through transformation. He is deeply familiar with the regulatory and operational requirements of both public and private sector entities and has a strong track record of delivering results under tight timelines. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Alhaji Mohammed Hayatuddin, OON.
We can do better than that. Please celebrate him.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure and honor to serve as chairman of session at this important 2026 Economic Outlook event, convened by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria as part of its 60th anniversary reflections, in connection with which I extend to you my warm congratulations. Let me begin by commending the President and Chairman of Council, Madam Haruna Yahya, members of Council, members of management, and the entire fraternity of ICAN for your visionary leadership in shaping Nigeria's economic discourse. Not from the sidelines, but from the very center of fiscal credibility and governance and professional accountability. But very importantly, I would like to recognize some very important personalities in this room. In the golden era of banking, in the late 80s and the 1990s, there was someone who stood tall as a celebrated chartered accountant and a banker, Alhaji Shehu Mohammed, who is here representing the Emir of Kano. As an executive director in First Bank under the leadership of Sam Asabia and Wale Ajioshu. Subsequently, on his own steam, as Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Allied Bank. A very special tribute to Your Highness. And I would like to welcome my friend and brother, the chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform, Taiwo Oyedele. Haruna and I go back a very long time. We were together in banking at FSB, rose to become the Chief Financial Officer. And he brought to this job a very sharp and analytical mind, strength of character, wisdom, and humility. Easily one of the best Chief Financial Officers I ever had in the bank. So at 60, ICAN is not merely marking longevity, it is asserting relevance. The chosen theme, accountability as the bedrock of national development, could not be more timely nor more necessary. And I assure you, I'm not inflicting a long speech on you. Just a couple of points. The very first thing is Nigeria is currently at an inflection point. It enters 2026 at a delicate but defining moment. After the turbulence of 2023-2024 reform cycle, the economy has regained a measure of macroeconomic stability. Inflation clearly has moderated. The exchange rate has stabilized relative to its earlier volatility. External reserves have strengthened, and growth is consolidating around the 4% range at this point in time. Yet, as we all know, stability is not the same thing as prosperity. We have quite some distance to go. The central question before us, therefore, is not whether stabilization has begun, but whether it can be sustained and translated into outcomes that Nigerians can feel. Can Nigeria convert macroeconomic repair into durable, inclusive, and productivity-driven growth? History warns us that this conversion is neither automatic nor guaranteed, especially in a pre-election year, when fiscal discipline is often tested and reform momentum can weaken, as past experience suggests. We're dealing with moving from numbers to outcomes. Therefore, how do we frame this tension? The figures available and the data points clearly tell us a mixed and instructive story. On the one hand, we see improved fiscal signals and stronger policy coordination. On the other, we confront persistent challenges. Growth of the economy remains job light. Second, real incomes that are only slowly recovering. Poverty and inequality pressures remain elevated. And we know that more people actually live below the poverty line than they ever did in the history of this country. This gap, therefore, raises an important tension for our discussion today. First, how do we reconcile improving macro indicators with slower social, and employment outcomes. Is the constraint primarily one of policy design, implementation capacity, institutional coordination, or is it the political economy? In simple terms, ladies and gentlemen, Nigeria's challenge in 2026 appears no longer to be stabilization alone, but execution. And very importantly, the quality of that execution of policy. How do you translate policy into favorable outcomes that affects macro indices very positively? Our job is to be open and to be truthful and frank, not because we want to be critics for the sake of it, but only because we want to be constructive and help the country, the government, and the people of this country that voted them into office to do better. Now, why is accountability central, which is actually the central theme of our discourse today? Accountability is not just a slogan. It is a cardinal principle. It shapes whether budgets are realistic or aspirational, whether revenues are collected or merely projected, whether debt remains manageable or becomes destabilizing, and whether reforms endure beyond political cycles. Nigeria's debt challenge, for instance, raises a critical question for all of us, not about headline numbers alone, but about cash flow sustainability. When a large share of government revenue is absorbed by debt service, how accountability is exercised in budgeting, revenue mobilization, and expenditure efficiency becomes a matter of national consequence. Let's now shift to tax reform, which is a defining structural shift. The new tax laws enacted in 2025 represent the most significant fiscal restructuring in decades. They signal a shift from discretion to rules, from opacity to transparency, and from fragmented administration to a more coherent national framework. However, this also raises an important question for practitioners and policymakers alike. Will ambition in tax policy be matched by capacity in tax administration and compliance? Because laws alone do not raise revenue, capacity does, systems do, and professionals do. How these reforms are executed will test institutions in terms of their durability and their efficacy, and place accountants, yourselves, and those of us who are on the margin of accountants, economists, tax professionals, and finance experts at the center of Nigeria's fiscal future. The accountant of 2026 is no longer driving his car looking at the rear view mirror all the time. He's looking at the windshield. In other words, he's no longer confined to historical reporting. Today's accountant is the custodian of fiscal credibility, interpreter of complex tax and regulatory systems, guardian of corporate and public sector governance, and increasingly an assurance provider in areas such as digital systems, especially in this age of artificial intelligence, ESG, environmental, social, and governance, climate risk, and sustainability reporting. This evolution raises another key discussion point. Is the profession scaling its skills, tools, and ethical frameworks fast enough to meet these expanding demands and pressures? ICAN's role, therefore, extends beyond certification to capacity building, policy advocacy, and institutional strengthening across all tiers of government, and indeed the entire private sector. Risks we must confront. As we look ahead, we must also be candid about the potential risks that we face. First, pre-election fiscal slippages. I was in politics in 2022, so I know what the game is all about. Food insecurity and climate-related shocks. Oil price volatility. Capital flow reversals. And persistent subnational fiscal weaknesses, especially subnational fiscal weaknesses. These are not risks that can be managed by rhetoric alone. They demand data-driven decisions, transparent reporting, and disciplined execution. Precisely the domains where professional accountants add the greatest value. You owe a seminal duty to your code of conduct and your profession to make sure that you carry out and discharge these functions properly and without fear or favor. It is therefore fitting that our keynote speaker addresses these questions head-on, bringing policy insight and practical experience to what is arguably Nigeria's most consequential economic year in a decade. In opening this conversation, ladies and gentlemen, Nigeria has earned macroeconomic breathing space. What remains under examination is whether that space will be used to build durable institutions, strengthen accountability, and convert stability into shared prosperity. I'm going off my speech for a single second to just mention to you that the world we live in is changing in ways that are far more profound and very deeply structured. There's a new world order. Since January 20th, 2025, we are part of that evolving order. It's important for members of your profession, diplomats, international relations experts, economists, to clearly understand the kind of forces that are reshaping our world and to determine how our continent is going to be positioned and how our country is going to be repositioned to actually avoid the threats and take advantage of opportunities. These are very, very interesting times. Our projections can just go out of the window because somebody sitting somewhere in an advanced country can take a decision which affects the totality of our welfare and the future of our children. So I think it's something that you should really pay attention to. Whether Nigeria makes that transition is the central question we're here to explore today. As ICAN marks 60 years of service, the challenge before the profession is not merely to comment on reforms, but to help the government and the Nigerian people in shaping outcomes through your skill and competence, your imagination, your courage, and consistency. I thank you for your attention. I look forward to the rich perspectives, debates, and insights. Thank you.
Let's do it bigger and better for our chairman of session. Alhaji Muhammad Ayatuddin, thank you very much for that chairman session remark. And he has actually made us understand that the dynamics of things are changing. And as professionals, we are profound to make sure that we contribute our quota to make things go the right perspective. So we want to go straight to the keynote address. And to do this is the man who before now I always refer to as professor, but the president affirmed that as professor of taxation. So if I remove the Mr. this morning, I decide to call professor, we can contest it, we'll go to court and I will definitely win. So join me as I humbly request him to be upstanding for his citation. The chairman, Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform. Make it loud for Professor Taiwo Oyedele, FCA. Technical, over to you.
Mr. Taiwo Oyedele is a Nigerian economist, accountant, and public policy expert. He serves as a chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms in Nigeria. Oyedele's career spans several key roles in both the private and public sectors. He spent 22 years at PwC, joining in 2001 and rising to become the fiscal policy partner and Africa tax leader. During this period, he also served as the vice chairman of the National Tax Policy Committee for the Federal Ministry of Finance, contributing to national tax reforms. His work on regional policy includes serving as the chairman of the West Africa Union of Tax Institutes high-level think tank on the ECOWAS integration project. His work on regional policy includes serving as the chairman of the West Africa Union of Tax Institutes high-level think tank on the ECOWAS integration project. He is also the thematic leader for the Fiscal Policy and Planning Commission and chairman of the West Africa Debt Management Roundtable under the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, NESG. He also provided expert insights to the World Bank. He was a chairman of the Taxation and Fiscal Policy Faculty Board of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, ICAN, and the Dean of Faculty of Direct Taxation at the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, CITN. Oyedele is a professor at Babcock University, adjunct faculty at the University of Lagos, and a visiting scholar at the Lagos Business School. He's the founder of Impact Africa Foundation, a non-profit organization focused on social impact and youth empowerment. He's a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, Nigeria Leadership Initiative, a member of the Global Tax Forum, and Harvard Business Review Advisory Council. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, FCA.
Please, with a round of applause, let me welcome to the podium Professor Taiwo Oyedele, FCA. Thank you.
Good morning. The president of our great institute and my very good big brother, members of council, the chairman of the session for today, and the eminent panelists, Aria Fada, thank you for being here. Senior, very, very senior members of the institute, ladies and gentlemen, good morning once again. Let me start by congratulating ICAN for this 60th anniversary. 60 years is not a joke. I wasn't even born at that time. And they already call me an old man, so you can imagine. So congratulations to us. And thank you to ICAN for your contribution to national development. ICAN continues to serve in the public interest. And that's why many of us feel proud to belong to the Institute. ICAN participated and contributed to the tax reform laws. ICAN represented by nobody other than the president. So thank you for your contributions. It will never be perfect. If you get the whole world to contribute, it will still not be perfect. There's a way God reminds us that we are human. But they say perfection is the enemy of progress. What you want to do at every point in time is to put one step in front of the other and keep moving forward. Nobody gets it figured out from the beginning. You fix it as you go along. So my topic for this keynote, which I'm very privileged and honored to be invited to speak to you, is about ICAN at 60. 2026 economic outlook with focus on accountability as a bedrock for national development. I've broken my presentation into 4 dimensions. First, I'll speak to accountability and national development. I'll then pivot to the accountability framework, the way I see it for Nigeria, and the missing link to national development. Of course, that means we then need to fix it if we really want to grow. We'll then spend some time looking at Nigeria's economic outlook for 2026. And I'll share my closing thoughts and conclusions with you. So let's start with accountability and national development. What is the context and what does it mean? So those who know me quite well, they know I like to simplify things because I went to a village primary school. I also went to a village secondary school. We were taught English in Yoruba, so it's not easy. So sometimes when you speak English, I have to process it in Yoruba first. So since it was difficult understanding big English, I don't speak them. So when I try to understand something, I'll read so many definitions from different sources. I can sit down with one definition and spend hours. When I'm done, I'll put it together in my words. That is the one I will never forget. So don't bother looking for my definition in the dictionary, you will not find it. So let me tell you the way I have defined accountability. Yes, I think it's on the screen. Accountability means transparently reporting and being answerable for one's decisions, actions, or inaction in the management of public resources and in the exercise of public trust. That's my definition of accountability. You offer to explain what you plan to do. You would answer when people ask you questions. You know, sometimes what I think we get wrong in public service, particularly in Nigeria, is people become arrogant when they get to public office. There's a reason why they call it public service. And they call the bulk of people who work in government, what? Civil servants. You were meant to serve the people. So when you're serving people, you answer their questions. And that is why in my own little space, where I've been given this responsibility to work with eminent Nigerians to help us fix our fiscal system, you will see me answering questions and explaining every time. And I will never get tired. You know, last night, before I could send my slides to ICAN, I'm sure the registrar woke up and saw the odd time that I sent it. I was in Abuja, so I had to fly back to Lagos for this, came in late in the evening, and the State House said, all these are your tasks that you're explaining. The young people don't seem to understand what you're saying. Let us have a session with them on TikTok. And I said, why not? Let's talk to them because this thing we are doing is actually for their future. They need to understand it. They said, okay, let's do 8 p.m. I said 8 p.m. is okay. In my mind, I thought we'd just spend like 30 minutes so I can finish my ICAN slides. We were there till past 12 midnight. By the time I finished, I said, what would I tell ICAN now? So I had to start doing slides at about 12:30. But I'm here and I'm not even complaining. I was planning to be here before everybody, like before 10. I got to the coastal road. You know, there's this one lane there. And there was this massive truck that was in front of us. It couldn't pass. We were there for more than 30 minutes. But we're here. Back to the presentation. Accountability. So if I bring out 3 core components of accountability, it would be, number 1, reporting. That is unbiased presentation of relevant information in a manner that is accessible, understandable, and timely. Every word I've put in these definitions are intentional. I can present information to you in a way that I don't want you to understand what I'm saying. And you will think I've presented the information, isn't it? I think my job is very easy because I'm speaking to accountants. I can do a whole financial statement and do disclosure and hide information from you. That is not being transparent. You have to, 1, present it without bias. 2, it must be relevant information. And 3, it must be accessible. Don't go and hide it. And then in a way that people can understand And don't tell me about 2020 in 2026. It's too late. It has to be timely. Let me ask you actually, out of curiosity, how many people know the budget for 2026 for their states? Not Lagos State, so you know some of us are not from Lagos State. We just became Lagosians. Does anybody know? You know, we are even accountants, so like if you don't know, nobody else will know in Nigeria. And I'll be honest with you, I'm from Ondo State. I don't know the one from Ondo State. Right? But I should know, isn't it? But maybe I can console myself that I know the one for all the states, which I will tell you about. But that's actually not where I'm going. Do you know that the closest level of government to us is the local government? Has anyone here seen the budget of their local government before? Past, present, or future? We have a long way to go as a people. You know, a lot of the problems we face, they don't require prayer and fasting, right? You can't pray and fast for there to be a budget for a local government. And if there's no budget, there can't be audited accounts. If there's no budget, no audited accounts, what are we talking about accountability? It does not exist. The second thing, you know, I said there are three components to accountability. I started with reporting. The second one is answerability. It is the obligation. You are not doing people a favor. It's your duty, the obligation to explain and justify decisions and actions to citizens and stakeholders. You owe it to them. This is why we're doing this. This is why we decided not to do this. And number three is responsibility. You must take ownership for the outcomes, whether they're good or whether they're bad. In this, my small assignment, I've seen all of it. The days they will praise me, and the day they'll say, where is the guy's address? Arrest Taiwo now. He forged documents. You have to take ownership for the outcomes. I wouldn't come out and say, no, it's not me. We did not, it was someone else. You can't finger points. That is not leadership. You take ownership, including consequences, whether they're good, whether they're bad. You know, I said that leadership is not just about service. It's also about sacrifice. You have to be willing to make sacrifices. So this is accountability. And I think it's important for us to be on the same page as to what exactly we are talking about. While my presentation will focus more on public service, this definition is applicable in whatever form of leadership you find yourself, including professional bodies like ICAN. How are you leading? In your association, how are you leading? Even at home, how do you lead? If you cannot be accountable in small roles, you will not be fit for a bigger responsibility. So prepare yourself. The second thing, now that we have defined accountability, and I did not see any objection in the room, let's then narrow down to what is national development so we can connect the dots. Again, national development is not just about GDP growth. They say gross domestic product has increased by 4.something%. The person in the village does not even know what you're talking about. They're concerned about, can I buy food for my kids when they're hungry? Can I find that 5,000 naira to buy exercise book, eraser, pencil, and school bag for them? When they're sick, can I get 500 naira to buy paracetamol? Can I get the money to pay for rent so I have a roof roof over my head. If those things don't add up, your GDP means nothing to them. So therefore, my view is that national development is the overall improvements in the well-being of the people. At the center of that conversation is people. It encompasses about 4 important dimensions. Number 1, economic development. What does it mean? It means rising incomes, poverty reduction, job creation, and improved living standard. You know, our parents, many of them struggled to send us to school. And I was saying at a forum recently that when it was time, you know, Taiwo is a twin, so I have a twin sister. When it was time for me to write my secondary school final exams, the entire amount for everything was 495 naira. My entire family could not raise 495 naira. I worked on weekends. You know, you have to go to school Monday to Friday. I worked every Saturday in the village. You know, the way we're taught in church was that it was a sin to work on Sunday, so we couldn't work on Sunday. I later realized that that's not what the Bible says. Anyway, we didn't work on Sundays. So I worked on Saturdays every week. I earned 5 naira. This is, you go very early in the morning, like 5 a.m. You come back tired in the evening, 5 naira, but they'll give me food. Sometimes they'll give me food to also bring back home. So imagine you work every weekend to earn 5 naira. You can't even raise 495 in a year. So the money was not enough. And we were thinking, what should we do? Should I delay? And so the village people, you know, they say village people, they always say it like it was supposed to be a negative thing. The village people in my village is close to Ajakuta Steel Company. These were low-level workers. They came together and said, why don't we sponsor the best students in our village school? You know, I told you I went to a village school. So that's how they contributed 500 naira. They wrote to the principal and said, give this 500 naira to the best students in the village school who wants to write the final exam. So principal called me and said, you have won a scholarship, 500 naira. This 500 naira was not a joke. So present the 500 naira. There was a community celebration. They canceled lecture in school for that day. The KBAC came. There was a cultural dance, 500 naira. To put 500 naira in context, it was about $20. Yeah, so just think about $20 now at that time. So it's still not a lot of money. My dad collected the 500 naira, paid 495, and kept the 5 naira. But anyway, that's not the gist. The gist is that I will probably not be in front of you today, if not for that 500 naira. So it matters how we cater for our most vulnerable population. They are not asking for so much, just a little, enough for them to make progress and keep hope alive. So therefore, economic development, I'll repeat it, is about the overall improvement in the well-being of the people. Those our parents struggled. They gave all they had to some of us so we can go to school. Why did they do that? To keep hope alive. So that maybe one day my daughter, my son will become an important person and take care of us and other people. So this should reflect in form of economic development, rising income, poverty reduction, job creation, and improved living standard, social development in the form of better education, healthcare, social protection, and access to basic services. Even though I went to a village school, my English was not as good as it is now, but at least I could speak English. Now it's harder for people to speak English from the village school because we are not sustaining the standard of education. Institutional development, strong governance, rule of law, stability, and meaningful citizen participation. Without leaving infrastructure behind, it also encompasses infrastructural development in the form of roads, power, water, digital connectivity. All of that to create an enabling environment for productivity and, most importantly, dignity. Do you know we have millions of citizens of Nigeria in 2026 that do not have a decent place to answer the call of nature? There was one story they told me recently, and it broke my heart. It was with some of these development partners. I think it must be either World Bank or UNDP. We're discussing something else. And some of the people that went somewhere in the north, they went to the markets to speak to ordinary people in the markets. And they found out that women in some markets in the north will not drink water during the day. You know why? Because if they want to wee, they need to pay. I couldn't believe we're doing that to ourselves. Somebody is asking them to pay 50 naira, 100 naira to wee. 100 naira to the person who developed the policy is nothing. But to that woman, that's the money to buy pencil for the kid they're hoping to get after the hard day work. So they won't pay 100 naira. The solution is don't drink water. Do you know what the health implication of that means? That's what we're doing to ourselves. We have to rethink our ways. So this is accountability, and here is national development. But are they connected? Let's find out. The budget for 2026 for the federal government is about 58 trillion naira. For all the states combined, about 35 trillion naira. The states plan to borrow about 4 trillion naira. In other words, they're hoping to generate around 31 trillion. Last year, the amount they shared from federation accounts was about 8 trillion, just state, not state and local, state alone, about 8 trillion. And the IGR was under 5 trillion. What magic do we plan to perform to close that fiscal gap? I don't know. Because sometimes it's either we don't properly understand issues of governance, or we take our personal ways of running our families into governance. There's a difference, ladies and gentlemen, between hope, aspiration, and running a country or government. Budgets are not instruments of hope. They are instruments of economic planning. Because what's going to happen is those budgets have, on the average, 54% capex. Because we haven't been diligent enough in putting the budgets together, we will not be able to meet the revenue. And it's not a curse, and it's not being pessimistic, it's being realistic. Do you know what will suffer? Infrastructure, isn't it? Remember national development, a key component of it is infrastructure, so that that woman can answer the call of the nation and won't have to pay. They can get running water. And their kids can go to decent schools where they can learn. But this accountability is a shared responsibility. We all have to play our parts. Trust is not built based on sentiments. You can't do it as you go along or based on popularity. It's done and earned deliberately based on how you focus on what is true when it's neither popular nor convenient. That's conviction. You know, at the end of the day, it might be 5 years, might be 10 years, and history will judge you right. So let's see the missing link between these developments and accountability, and how can we close the gap? So on the next slide, it wants to have it there. The first one I have there, I have three important aspects of accountability that I want to marry with development. The first one is political accountability. What does it mean? Elected and appointed officials answering to citizens for delivering on promises and acting in the public interest, not in the interest of your friends and family, not in the interest of people of your religion, of the region you belong to. And the pressure we put on public people serving government is ridiculous in Nigeria. If you know the kind of demands people place on me just to be head of committee, so everybody wants appointment, contract. So I should carry, because I said to myself, if you want to build a nation that works, you must provide equal opportunities for people. You don't need to equalize the values they get, but just give them equal opportunity. If the child of that woman, that man in the village, no connection, they don't know anyone, if they have no hope of getting a job, then what kind of society are we building? Because sometimes you see an advert for a job in the public sector. They have selected the people they want. The advert is so they can tick a box. In fact, punish the poor people because they are the ones that will now apply, hoping they can get the jobs. Travel to go and do interviews. They've selected already. That cannot be right. So there should be political accountability where we act in the public interest. It's called public interest for a reason. When you hire your friend, your relatives, who is less qualified into a role, we all suffer the consequences. Incompetence is dangerous, sometimes more than corruption. Number two is financial accountability. It is tracking and reporting how public funds are raised and spent through budgeting with proper auditing and transparent reporting. Auditor General will do audits very, very late. People ignore the reports there, right? Why are we not taking simple things serious that can move us forward? And there's performance accountability. It is demonstrating results against agreed objectives and outcomes, not just the process. You cannot say, I tried, right? It's okay, you can tell us you tried, but that's not what we are looking for. We want outcomes. Outcomes. There was one government agency who said, we have gone digital. We have now created a website. So I went and looked at their website. This was a couple of years ago. They had 4 websites. So transact business with the website was harder than going to the office physically. I said, why do you even have 4 websites? They said, the person that developed the first one left. They didn't give them access to the back end. And then you repeated it. Apparently somebody was trying to award contract as many times as possible. Okay. Now, how do you link all this accountability? Political accountability, financial accountability, and performance accountability. We have to link that to our GDP growth so it can be inclusive. And so we can bring everyone along. My preference is even that we start focusing more on sustainable development goals. No poverty, access to clean water, food is available, there's employment, there's decent health care. Those things count more than GDP. But yet, GDP is a key measure of development. For it to be meaningful, it has to be inclusive. The second one is human capital development. It's about quality education, high literacy rates, good health care, low poverty, and social security and sustainable development goals. And finally, again, we are back to infrastructure, which means not only the hard structures of roads, housing, but also the soft ones, including access to broadband. You know that, remember the Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory, right? So there's a physiological need. where you must survive. You need food, you need water, you need shelter, security. I said, if the man was living in present day world, there will be data and internet as part of physiological need, isn't it? So the world requires you to have access to basic soft infrastructure to be able to stand a chance at competing at all. So let's move on now and look at Nigeria's outlook for 2026 as I begin to wrap up. Generally, I believe that we are better positioned for growth in 2026 than in the previous years. We're more resilient as a result of the reforms, but there has to be cautious optimism because it's not Uhuru yet. We're not there. It's still a journey. So what are the highlights I want to discuss with you? Number one is we see slow global growth in 2026 for many reasons, including challenges in the world-leading economies like China. America is also quite uncertain. No thanks to Mr. Donald Trump. The EU has been struggling for a while. I don't think anything will change dramatically. The powerhouses in Europe, like Germany, are struggling. France is almost running out of money. So, there is this MOU between NRS and France where people say a lot of things, right? And I say to myself, we have this inferiority complex. It has not left us completely. Let me tell you what I mean by that. So first, when we started this reform, what they normally do in government committees is you go on a study tour. You go to different countries and say you want to learn what they are doing. So we now said to ourselves in our committee that we cannot be doing that or that. We already said that Nigeria is not prudent. We should lead by example. We said we will not travel anywhere. We just do Zoom meetings. People can learn via Zoom, right? That is how we went to ambassadors. We went to more than 30 ambassadors, more than 15 from Europe. Their ambassador, can you link us up with your revenue service and Ministry of Finance so we can do Zoom meeting? We want to ask them questions. If you are trying to do something in 2026 that some people have done for 20 years, does it not just make sense to learn from them? Otherwise, you will repeat their mistake in 2026. Many of them gladly connected us. We had those Zoom meetings, asked questions, follow-up meetings. France was one of the countries we spoke to. We were extremely impressed with France. Of all the countries we spoke to, France is the most efficient in collecting taxes. If they start to collect, when we ask them a question about how do you deal with tax evasion and avoidance, they say, if they start to collect, we just collect. Like they don't even understand why that's supposed to be a question. They collect 44% of GDP. Their revenue office is called DGFIP. It's a long name for a French name. The acronym is DGFIP. DGFIP has about 90,000 staff. Do you know FRS does not even have 15,000? DGFIP has 90,000 staff. Their own budget to run the organization, 8 billion euros. 8 billion euros. And they generate more than 1 trillion euros. They collect tax for everyone. So we are talking about harmonization. When we saw France, we said, hey, this is how harmonization is supposed to look like. We were very excited with France. We told them we're very impressed. And they said, no, don't worry. If you want us to help us, we're willing to help you. In fact, they sent, because we said we're not going, they sent people to come to Nigeria. They spent time with our committee, with FRS, because we told them it's not about our committee because our committee is temporary. Go to the institutions. They went to Ministry of Finance, went to FRS. The bulk of what we're asking them to do were help for FRS. Let's learn from you, training, capacity development, sharing experiences. So they say, okay, let's document it. So we agree what we are supposed to do. One of the things they put in the agreement is, should you have to come to France, you will pay your own flight, but we will provide meeting room. If we are coming to Nigeria, we will pay our flights. What's the big deal about those stuff? And then FRS signed it. They were very happy to sign. They put it on social media. People say, hey, they secretly signed an agreement. They want to give Nigeria data to France. The first time I saw the post, it was a professor that wrote it. You would think he was in the room when they drafted it. Nigeria is sharing data with France. So I said to myself, this is inferiority complex. You know why? You have two parties, some Nigerians and some French people. They wrote an agreement on an MOU for capacity building. You haven't thought that it's possible that these French people will give access to Nigeria to see their data so they can see how they have been doing it. You didn't think that was a possibility. You know why? You believe the French people are smart enough. But when it's your people, these people must be very stupid. I about Venezuela, it talks to you about China. Because that's about 1 million barrels they produce every day, heavy crude, because of the sanction of America, by the way. They sell to China at a discount. The bulk of Venezuela's oil goes to China every single day. So, you know, America started first by blocking the exports of the product before they took the president. So the person that is feeling the pain the most is China. And the whole idea is if you undermine China's energy security, they will be vulnerable. So, but if we leave that, because it's still conspiracy analysis, but there's a lot of fact behind it. But if you leave that for a moment, when you can't export, you know what happens? Even your 1 million barrels a day will drop because you have to then do shorting. So restart again. If you want to invest to increase the production of Venezuela from 1 million barrels a day to 2 million barrels a day, it will take you between 5 to 10 years and you spend at least $80 billion. Mr. Donald Trump called the big oil company and said, by the way, you know, Venezuela, we are not the one controlling it. We need you to go and invest. The CEO of ExxonMobil said, it is not investable. Like, we're not supposed to be investing there. We don't invest because the president says go and invest. So my summary is, you know, the total production of crude oil per day worldwide is about 102 million barrels is what we produce in the world every single day. The consumption is about 101 million barrels. So there's slight excess supply of like 1 million barrels. But you know, many countries keep reserve. So it's not everything that they buy that they use. They save some of them. So we seem to be balanced. But let's even say everything works out for Venezuela and they increase their 1 million barrels to 2 million barrels. Do you think it will make heaven fall? No. People are already saying, change your budget benchmark to $50. I like when it's not about being conservative. It's about using data appropriately to predict likely outcomes. I'm not saying $64 is fine. I'm saying that the basis for saying it should be $50 is faulty. Let's not always jump into conclusions based on superficial analysis. Geopolitical conflicts. There's rising geopolitical tension. The ongoing war in Ukraine continues. There's civil unrest in some countries, including Iran, where we have different numbers of how many people have been killed. And Mr. Trump saying that I'll come and help the protesters. Do you think he loves the protesters a lot? Of course not. And we see military coup in our region here. And I saw one event they had about 2 days ago. One clergyman was preaching to military. He said, don't be tempted based on what you see around though. Please don't take over government. And 2026 is the pre-election year, so it will have consequences. Government policies in most cases will be impacted by political consideration than usual because they want to win elections. Inflation and exchange rates. These are like two of the most important macroeconomic indicators for our country. What is the outlook like? I think that inflation for Nigeria for 2026 will be low double digits or high single digits. Something in the range of 8 to about 12, 13. When the government said the target for 2025 was going to be 14. Or is it 15? I think 14 or 15. Some people say it is not possible. What do they want to do? When they did rebasing, they said we said it now, they have done rebasing just so they can cook the numbers. So I keep saying to myself, why do we like negative stuff about our country? If somebody was doing the calculation of your inflation using a period that is far behind, and they now recalculate it so they can use a more recent period, which one is more reliable? When they did the old one, not many people were eating out, right? People ate at home, which means they will buy yam, they will buy rice and beans, and they will cook it and eat. Fast forward to 2024, more people ate out at rest. Remember when we were, I don't even know where we were, maybe we were in secondary school. It was only Mr. Biggs. Do you remember Mr. Biggs? He was the only one. If you want to do party and birthday, you go to Mr. Biggs. Today, you can count so many in just one street. People now eat out than before. So if you say all the people that eat still buy food to go and cook, that is misleading information because that's not true. So they took food inflation and reflected the percentage of people who eat at restaurants. You see food inflation, percentage of the basket goes down and the restaurant goes up. Another one, telecommunication. The amount of our money we spent on telecommunication in the old base was less than 1% because many of us could not even buy it. Remember when a SIM card was 50,000 naira? Now they give you SIM card for free. Almost everybody has a phone. The percentage of our money we spent on data and airtime has increased. Reflect it. But because the outcome is not bad news, people fought it. But at the end of the day, we got to 14% by the end of the year. The spike you will see for December is a base effect. So don't worry too much about it. You know, there's something that is important that I've been thinking about, is that if we continue to be negative about our country, we all pay the price. There's something they call prejudice premium. If you go online and just Google any subject about Nigeria, you find plenty of negative stuff. If you're an investor, do you think you'll be excited to go there? No. If you even want to give somebody a loan, you put a premium on it because it's like a risky country. We make Nigeria look bad more than it is in reality. It does not help us. So that's my expectation on inflation. How about exchange rates? I thought that last year that the government should have a target of even less than 1,400. So when we ended at a little over 1,004, I said all the people that predicted at the beginning of the year, 1718, theoretical prediction. Because some people have been taught that once inflation rate in Nigeria is higher than inflation rate in America, Naira will depreciate. That's the theoretical analysis. But these things are driven by more than that. Ghana's currency has gained more than 40%. Inflation in Ghana is higher than the US. Because that's not the only factor to consider. So I think that for 2026, Nigeria's exchange rate will hover at an average of less than 1,400 for very obvious reasons. Our external reserve is growing. Current account surplus is in tens of billions of dollars. So we're not doing badly. We can do better. Tax reform. Okay, you know, if I start tax reform, we'll not finish. So let's leave tax reform alone and just say in 2026, tax reform will play a key role. You know, and then there's insecurity that we're hoping will be better in 2026, partly due to the international cooperation and the pressure. I like the pressure on our politicians. Anything that forces us to do the right thing is good. Hopefully we can sustain that. You know, when they said they should remove police for VIP, you know, they've said it many times in Nigeria before, and it has never worked. It's working now. I say when Nigeria is ready to do something, they know how to enforce it. Suddenly, VIPs are feeling insecure. Maybe if all of us feel insecure, we'll do something about insecurity. And one other thing that I thought about is that in trying to deal with this issue of accountability and national development, we need to think about structural solutions. When you see smoke, don't worry too much about the smoke. Find the source of the smoke. It will usually be fire, isn't it? So what we do in Nigeria is try to battle smoke every time. We leave the fire alone. ICAN, being the leading professional accountancy body in Nigeria, can lead this charge. I know you have the accountability framework, but let's also pivot into specifics. I'll give you just 2 examples. You know about security votes, isn't it? I saw some numbers, they can give you a headache that I saw in the press this morning. You know that our politicians don't explain it. You know why? They say security matters are confidential. Do you believe them? Okay, whether you believe them or not, if there's no accountability, there will be misuse. Do you agree? Okay, let's agree that security matters are confidential. They're not supposed to be disclosed. How about we pass a law that says after 10 years, the security vote will be declassified? At least there's no risk again for what you did 10 years ago. But if you are governor today and you collect security vote and you know that in 10 years' time, you'll be asked to explain it, don't you think it will change how you manage that security vote? That's one example. Another one is local government I told you about. How about we have a law that mandates local government to do their development plan based on their roles in the constitution? Sanitation, inner roads. They're supposed to provide shelter for people who are homeless, but we embarrass them because we think they dirty our cities. That's how we treat our people. Do your development plan, use it to do your budget, do audited accounts, and put everything online so we can see. I also think, I like what the Judicial Council did. They screened people that they wanted to consider to be judges. And they said someone did not pass integrity test. I said, this is not bad though. How about we do this for everyone in public office? And even top professional bodies. Imagine ICAN says before you can become FCA, you go through an integrity screening. So there's some myth and misinformation about the tax reform that I have on the next slide that are not true. Like saying people are struggling, why are you taxing them? Okay. Why are you taxing people that are struggling? Say, no. This reform is actually to relieve them. So the time is right. Oh, they say minimum wage earners will pay tax. Say, no, that's wrong mathematics. When you go to the 800,000 naira in the tax table and you say 70 times 12 is 840, it means they will still pay tax on 40,000. There's a difference between gross income and taxable income. That 800,000 naira is called taxable income. That's not the money you sign in your employment letter. When you take your gross income, you do adjustment for deductibles and then reliefs before you arrive at taxable income. Plus, there's a specific provision in the new tax law exempting national minimum wage earners. So if you increase minimum wage to 300,000 naira a month today, they're exempted immediately based on the language in the new tax law. The other thing that people have complained about, and I've even seen this from professional accountants and tax practitioners, they say, why did they give only 500,000 naira maximum for rent? Don't they know that some people pay 10 million as rent? Why did they remove consolidated this personal relief of 20%? Let me explain to you. Like I say, accountability means I have to explain, isn't it? Yes, so I shall explain very briefly. Number one, the 500,000 naira wasn't meant to pay your rent. It was a provision we debated and included for one reason. And the reason was to take care of the urban poor. Your most vulnerable citizens are the urban poor. So they are poor and they're in the urban center. You know why they are the most vulnerable? When you're poor and you're in the village, you don't need a lot of money. The food you eat, you produce it. You trek to school and trek to market and church and mosque, right? If you don't have a house, you stay with someone, they won't even discuss rent. But when you're in the city and you're poor, you pay rent, transport, and you buy food. So we thought the one way to distinguish between urban poor and the rural poor is that they pay rent when they are urban poor. And the kind of rent they pay is not those millions you're talking about. So let's give them some sort of relief. So if I'm a junior worker in Lagos and I earn 1 million naira a year, and my friend, the same level, the same organization, is in Ekiti and earns 1 million, my life is harder than that person, isn't it? So, but you see that in the rent that I pay. So I get a bit more relief than that, my friend. That was the objective. It wasn't to pay the rent for rich people. They say 20% relief allowance. Why did they remove it? I can also explain. The explanation is that when you give a standard 20% relief, that relief is regressive. Because if I earn 100 million naira a year, you give me relief of 20 million naira. If I earn 1 million naira a year, you give me relief of 200,000. It's difficult for you to make your tax system progressive. What you should do is to estimate what is it that you need to meet your basic needs and exempt that amount for everyone, right? And then the rest of us then pay tax. Plus, even if I give you 20% relief, I can still make you pay more tax than if I don't give you the relief, isn't it? So you earn 1 million, and you have 20% relief, and you pay 10% on the balance. Your tax will be 80,000. What if I say you have no relief, but you pay 7%? That's 70,000. So let's not be fixated on the format we had before, because one other objective we're trying to accomplish with the tax reform is to keep it simple so people can do their tax computation themselves if they cannot afford a lawyer or an accountant. Simplicity. And some people said, this 800,000 naira is too small. Why did you not make it 5 million? I said, I wish we had the ability to do that. If only people knew how hard it was to get the state to agree to that amount. One state told us that this our new tax reform has exempted more than 90% of all their taxpayers. They said, where do we expect them to find IGR to pay civil servants? It was a hard question to answer. I said, we said to them, Your Excellency, you know your FAC amount has increased. It wasn't an easy conversation. It's not all the conversation you see in the press. But there are stakeholders that if you don't carry them along, we'll not be talking about new tax reform. It will not have succeeded. When the governor said the reforms were not moving forward, it truly was not moving forward. So you need to balance stakeholder, but it's progress. It's 800,000 naira now. Maybe by next 2-3 years, it can be 5 million, but let's keep making progress. I'll leave the rest. You see on the next slide some data showing that only 1.5% of top earners in South Africa, they pay more than the rest of the population. Last year, South Africa collected more than 60 trillion naira equivalent from personal income tax alone. Nigeria barely collected 2 trillion with 4 times the population of South Africa. Something is wrong with our fiscal system. This South Africa actually exempts a lot of their poor people, higher exemption threshold. They also have a lower rate and exemption for their seniors. So we can do the same thing. I know it's hard for anybody to pay tax, even if you earn 1 billion naira a year, but you have to think about your country and put Nigeria's interests above. We've seen people who are being paid to protest against this reform. You see a group, they gave them 300 million naira to go and protest. In the process of sharing 300 million, disagreements broke. Some of them went on to the media and said, we are not doing again, EFCC. They invited the EFCC. All right. On the next slide, you see how misinformation can be very expensive. Sometimes last year, some people decided to develop a narrative around capital gain stars in the capital market. They said, oh, the capital market is losing value because of CGT. This was November. They repeated it for 4 to 5 days. By the end of day 5, it was primetime news on channels 10 p.m. on Arise. Nairametrics had a Twitter space, bloodbaths. When we kept repeating it, people started believing it. And on the 11th of November 2025, I call it the Black Tuesday, the market lost 4.6 trillion naira in one day. Because everybody went to the market trying to sell because they heard that CGT has come to take all their money away. We explained it and the market bounced back. But we took the data for that day. Data, right? We took the data for that day. Look at what we found. That day, there were 20,173 deals, number of transactions, valued at 23.5 billion naira, which means average for one transaction was just a little over 1 million naira. The new tax laws exempt someone who sells up to 150 million naira a year. Why are people selling 1 million naira in panic? The danger of misinformation. That fake news, because it's fake, it's not supported by data, led to real losses for people, including some people whose pensions are with PFAs, lost money. So we have to be mindful of what we say, particularly when we're unsure. And some people are still promoting saying no to the reform. And I say, okay, if you're saying no, know that no is not neutral. Why? Because when you say no to the reform, you are saying yes to the status quo. What does it mean? Status quo means excessive tax burden will continue, including multiplicity of taxes and the agencies collecting them. Economic distortion will persist, including the distortion coming from the free zone enterprises who are not paying corporate tax. They produce and compete with companies in the domestic market that are paying taxes. Those domestic market companies cannot survive. And there'll be fiscal vulnerability. If government can't find the money to fund the budget, it doesn't matter what we say. You know what they'll do? They'll print the money to spend. When they print the money to spend, that is taxation without legislation. The money in your wallet, in your bank account, and in your pocket falls proportionately to the value of money that they have printed. Sadly, that form of taxation increases inequality because it punishes the poor people more than the rich. You know why? Because the rich have some of their wealth in assets that appreciate like property. Many of them have dollar investments. That's why the value of domiciliary accounts in Nigeria is over $30 billion. No poor person has $1 inside. So if you leave the system not to work because you hate the matter of tax matters, government will print. Buhari printed about 30 trillion naira. We will print more. And then when you print more and you widen that inequality and social discontent and poverty, you soon have a country where you cannot sleep with your two eyes closed. You know, there's this saying that the poor man cannot sleep because the poor man is hungry. And the rich man cannot sleep because the poor man is awake. So my final thoughts, because now I spent more than the time they gave me, so I apologize. Accountability is a bridge between reform and results. Your reforms can be brilliant. I've never seen any reform ideas in Nigeria that is not brilliant. We're actually very brilliant. It's not because I'm Nigerian. We're just not very good with execution. And one of the reasons why execution failed is poor accountability. Because we now don't know what you are doing because you are not telling us. And then we continue to pray and fast. What should we do? Number one, let's build trust. When trust rises, reforms are easier and resistance to reform declines and results are better. Number two, let's seek knowledge, especially in terms of how we demand for accountability. If you come to me and you ask me a question and I see you are confused with your question, do you think I will take you seriously? I wouldn't. I remember one of the Congress sessions in the US, Congress. They invited the tech companies. They wanted to regulate social media. When the lawmakers were asking the tech, they asked one to Mark Zuckerberg on Facebook. They said, this is your Facebook. How do you make money when people don't pay to subscribe? They didn't understand it. One of them said, can my daughter use Twitter to put something on my account? So like questions that were ridiculous. So you know what you do if you're the person answering it? Say, just let me go. But if somebody comes to you and they ask questions about what you do from a knowledge point of view, you pay attention to them. one thing that is missing in Nigeria, including those of us that are professionals, we don't pay attention enough to understand, to ask probing, meaningful, and insightful questions. That needs to change. Let's spend time on the budget. If we, accountants, haven't read the budget and we don't understand it, who is supposed to understand it? Is it the market woman? Is it the tailor? Is it the mechanic or vulcanizer? They have no chance. On behalf of all of them, we have a duty. You have an unwritten job description to understand everything to do with finance for Nigeria. So you can help the rest of our population understand it and ask the right question. And when you do ask the right questions, insist on credible answers. And finally, please take action. Governance, accountability, and development is a shared responsibility. Speak truth to power, but also speak truth to the people. I have come to realize that in Nigeria, it's easier to speak truth to power than it is to speak truth to the people. You can go on Chinese TV or Arise and say government is corrupt. Nobody is even interested in what you have said. You leave and go to your home gently, no issues. But go online and tell them that this tax reform is good. Come back after 5 minutes and see the way they would have attacked you. So which means even when you are convinced that this reform is good, you don't want to say it because it's hard to speak truth to people. But we have no choice because that's the only way to move forward. That's the only way to connect the dots. That is the only way to promote accountability and ultimately national development. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
I was thinking with that deliverable from Professor Taiwo Oyedele, he deserves a standing ovation, giving us a greater insight as professionals, and let's make it loud and loud and loud to appreciate you. Thank you very much, Professor Taiwo Oyedele. Thank you very much. Please, let's have a seat. First and foremost, let me appreciate Mr. President and the member of the Governing Council for giving us this session. I think yesterday I was on set with New Central to discuss this tax too. And they were like, we need more professionals to enlighten us. Don't let's be on the other side so that we can move this country forward. I think we are better together with the good things that we say about our country than the negativity. Before we go to the panel session, let me quickly recognize the representative of the EFCC chairman, Mr. Olanipekun Olukorede, ably represented by ACE Adeniyi Adebayo. Please, a round of applause for him. Be rest assured that they are not here to pick you, but just to support the outlook that we have. So on this note, we have heard the keynote address, and we want to go to the panel session, which will definitely be handled by the chairman of session. But it will interest you for us to introduce the panelists that we have very much here with us this afternoon. In no particular order, let's recognize the great men that will be given insight to the topic of discourse from different perspectives: manufacturers, the regulators, the professionals, and from the economic point of view, which is balanced, if you ask me, if you have an open earth. And the first on the list, let me recognize the founder and the chief consultant at Adedipe Associate Limited, Dr. Professor Biodun Adedipe. Please a round of applause for him. Thank you very much for making our time.
We also recognize the Director General, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Dr. Chinyere Almona, FCA. Please put your hands together for her.
And also very much present here is the partner, consulting business and West Africa financial advisory leader, Deloitte, put together for Mrs. Abimbola Ogundare, FCA.
And we have Mr. Segun Ajayi Kajiri, MNI. He's the Director General, Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. Please put your hands together for him.
Thank you very much. On this note, I will be yielding the floor to the chairman of our session, our own Alhaji Mohammed Hayatuddin, as he moderates this particular panel session. Over to you, sir.
Well, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we're rapidly coming to a close of this particular session. Based on the timetable that was advised to me, we were supposed to be getting out of here by 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We have encountered some time overrun. So in the interest of getting everybody out of here by 1, we'll endeavor to, shorten the panel discussion. I do apologize. The panelists have already been introduced. And what I would do is that I'm going to field a couple of questions. So each panelist should prepare to take down the questions that I will ask. I'll consolidate the number of questions under each panelist. I have decided to reduce the burden on you by reducing the number of questions from 4 to either 2 or 3 at the most. These questions are actually framed to discuss the trade-offs rather than generating a consensus. Because what we like to do is to get as much diverse opinion as possible, even if they're conflicting. That's fine. Second, the exposed execution gaps, not necessarily the policy intent. 3, shift the conversation from diagnosis to decision. All of these people are practitioners in the industry, and therefore they know exactly where it hurts, where the pain points are. We expect you, while the chairman is here, he was himself very, very candid and very open. At one point, I thought he was not even a member of the government. So I will start with Dr. Biodun Adedipe. 2 questions for you. We know that macro repair is visible, but lived prosperity is not. The question here is, Nigeria may be consolidating growth and FX stability, yet households feel little relief. So from a private sector perspective, what must businesses change structurally, not tactically, to convert macro stabilization into sustained demand, jobs, and real income growth? In other words, how do you enhance the quality of life for the average citizen? The second question for you has a bearing on the political economy. History generally shows that there is reform fatigue before elections. You know what that is, right? If fiscal discipline weakens or capital flows reverse, what specific contingency playbooks, such as cash buffers, currency exposure limits, CapEx deferrals, should prudent business leaders already be stress testing? Those are the 2 questions for you.
Thank you very much. And I also stand on existing protocols in terms of our time. The first question, I put in the context of trickle down. And that is, how do we get from macroeconomic stability to trickle down where the regular Nigerian begins to feel the effect of the reforms? Now, I like to make 2 important areas where already trickle down is happening. but hardly do people discuss that. The first is with respect to NERF, which is the student loans. And it means, in my simple interpretation, is that if I have a child in the university who accesses student loan, it means I don't have to bring money out of my pocket to pay my child or, dependents' school fees. That's number one. Secondly, my child also gets stipend of 20,000 naira every month from the federal government. So which means even if I need to support this child with more money, at least that in a way reduces what I need to put out to take care of my ward in the university. So that for me is trickled down because some money I would have spent is now taken care of under that scheme. The second one is consumer credit, corporation. Let me call it that, credit corp. Now, Nigeria as a nation began talking about consumer credit in 2007. That was when we launched the first policy on that, but we never executed it, which comes to one of the points that Mr. Oyedele mentioned. So, but now an institution has been set up for implementation of consumer credit, which gives the regular Nigerian access to credit at less than the commercial rate direct for the banks, because it charges at 2/3 of what banks will not charge you for borrowing from them. But for what purpose? These loans are available to not only acquire vehicles, furnitures, refrigerators, deep freezers, computers, telephones. So anything you require to live a fairly comfortable life. For me, that is also part of trickle down. So now, in taking that further, we say it now needs to be deepened. Now, where do companies come into this? And this is where I take at structural response rather than merely talking about systemic. So structure, there are 4 key areas that companies should be interrogating in an environment like this. The first is your people. And people means right from shareholders to directors, to employees, to customers, volunteers, contributors of any kind, are involved and engaged in the business. So that is one thing every business leader should be looking at a time like this, getting them a lot more involved. In fact, what I say is that for every, you are looking at structuring the way you manage performance of employees in a way to contribution. You want to deepen their contribution. Secondly, is your strategy. In an environment like this, you don't joke with your strategy. That means you must interrogate it and on an ongoing basis, update your strategy. Strategy means you not only take account of what Mr. Oyedele said earlier on about the global environment where you do business, you also bring in context what is happening in Nigeria, and then go into your own specific industry. What are the dynamics of your industry before you now make your strategic initiatives? Now, developing them is not the end of the matter. Your strategic initiatives must also be well communicated to those people I mentioned earlier on, which means they all understand it and can explain it in a simple manner. Thirdly, operations. Your operations must work without drama. And what is important there, I think Mr. Oyedele also mentioned that in his presentation. The important place of agentic artificial intelligence is very, very paramount to anyone that wants to operate business successfully. It means, number one, you have to adopt AI tools and then deploy them. And I need to put this note that if your company will remain resilient, we call it building a resilient bridge, the resilience bridge, you must consider that the company that will become less competitive in the next couple of years are not necessarily those who ignore AI per se, but those who don't know how to deploy AI tools and use them. Just like we say about individuals, AI won't take anybody's jobs. AI won't kill your business directly, but your business can die if you choose not to adopt and deploy AI tools. They do 4 things. first is descriptive to make you understand what is happening in your business and the environment. Then the analytics side to it brings you to understand what the data is saying, data available. Every company sits on a lake of data. But the question is, what intelligence are we making of the data? Number three is that it is also, apart from being descriptive and analytic, it also can be predictive. Okay, it gives you an idea of what will happen tomorrow, next a couple of years. Finally, it is also prescriptive, which means it now makes recommendations of what you should do. So if you take all this into account, it then means added to that is cash. Cash is the final component. And that means you are in an environment now where we must be disciplined in dealing with cash. That means you will have some capital expenditure, you differ, which is you make a business case for every capital acquisition, a strict business case. And equally, managing cash effectively becomes a major challenge. We call it cash flow management, which means companies, leaders must pay more attention to cash flow management, the interplay between inflows and outflows, and of course, tracking that on an ongoing basis. In fact, I will say you not only track daily, it's beyond just tracking weekly, monthly, as we used to do historically, but on a daily basis. The final point there is that when opportunities emerge, if you don't have the cash, you cannot take advantage of them. That is why it is important to manage cash. Now, I will wrap it up this way, is to bring in my response to the second question, because it crosses also what I would have said to that. The pre-election year, typically, politicians go attention to preparing for elections rather than governance. So in such an environment, what should business leaders expect? Ordinarily, politicians will pay more attention to projects. We see a flurry of projects that they want to execute to look good before the electorate. And of course, it also means that by all means, you need to reset your priorities. Priorities need to be reset. And of course, I will add this to it, that when it comes to FX vulnerability in the pre-election year, we already have the history of it in Nigeria, since 1998, 2002, up until date. So we have the data on all of this. We know how this also played out. But 2026 is a peculiar year. Peculiar because Mr. Odele made a remark that I will amplify that a little, and it goes this way. Now, when you talk about exchange rate movements, there are 12 factors that we track in forming an expectation of where the exchange value of a currency will go to. So, but oftentimes people pay attention to inflation, current. They also give more attention to expected inflation. But in fact, there are a whole lot more. When we look at all those factors, what they say to us is that clearly, as at today, unless there's thunder strike, let me add that to it, okay? There is no indication that Naira will depreciate this year. And of course, the flip side to it is the place of foreign investors who are still very much interested in bringing investment into Nigeria in response to the reforms and the prospect that there won't be a reversal of the reforms. So that way, therefore, I don't see FX hedging as a big thing that corporate leaders should worry about this year, especially in expectation of exchange rate for 6 and even external reserves, as well as the interplay of our imports and exports. So I will stop there, sir, because of our time, as you said. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. The next set of questions will go to Dr. Chinyere Almora. And the theme here is sustaining credible reform execution. I have two questions for you. It has always been the case since I was a child perhaps better under the First Republic than subsequently, that Nigeria's binding constraint is actually execution. Implementation execution has been the fundamental constraint. The plan, as far as I'm concerned, is 20%. Successful implementation represents 80%. So from the perspective of organized private sector advocacy, what are the institutional gridlocks relating to coordination failures, incentives, or capacity gaps, which typically undermine reform delivery, and which ones must be fixed first, if you were to place it in an order of ranking? So that's the first question. Do you want to answer that? And then I can take on the second one?
Please go ahead, sir.
Okay, good. The second question is the notion that climate reporting is becoming a market gatekeeper and is being embodied all over the world by countries and multilateral and bilateral institutions and private companies. So global supply chains increasingly require verified climate data. What practical steps must Nigerian businesses take to move from aspirational sustainability claims to readily bankable, audit-ready climate disclosures?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to the president of our great institute for hosting us at this very timely event. And thanks, Taiwo, for that very insightful presentation. The first question is about execution. So yes, we talk a lot about reforms and the fact that we're not lacking in policies in this country. What we always lack is the ability to put it into action, to actually implement something that will influence or affect the common man for the good. And I think that now, I mean, even with this tax reform to face with bringing it out and really going live with it, it's also clear that apart from even having the reforms, it's also important that we are able to gazette the reforms properly and disseminate properly, and then move into implementation effectively. One critical point for me is interagency engagement when it comes to execution of policy reforms, because sometimes you have agents applying or executing reforms in a way that there isn't proper sequencing. So who does what first? And then sometimes you have conflicts in terms of how they actually execute. We had a situation once where in the private sector, there was a port reform, there was a port levy. And we went on in terms of advocacy to say, no, this is not good. It's in the middle of the year. Businesses didn't see it coming. We need to think about it again. And then government suspended it. The announcement was made and we're all very happy. We celebrated the announcement. But weeks later, we realized that our members were still being charged. And after several efforts to reach out to the customs, we eventually had a stakeholder meeting. We called the customs officials, please, what's going on? Government has said this has been suspended. Why are we still being charged? And they said they hadn't received the guideline or the circular. Thank you. They hadn't received circular. Okay, so we are now wondering, now what do we need to do? We're not wondering what we need to do. So we see in that situation that a policy has been made, announced, celebrated, but execution is zero. And so it's affecting the private sector because then we can't do business, or doing business is more costly than it should typically be. So these are the bottlenecks that we face when we have to deal with these issues. And then sometimes you have agencies, one agency is moving forward and gaining some important benefits for the marketplace, for the private sector, and some other agencies working against it by the way they are actually executing. So that tells me that there's a problem with the execution infrastructure or the architecture for execution, because we haven't clearly demarcated who is doing what, at what point, and what are we holding people accountable for. when Taiwo was talking about the gap between policy reform and development, the gap he identified, accountability. How are we holding accountable? It's not clear. And that leads me to the second point, which is the fact that we tend to celebrate public announcement or reforms being announced, but we don't get into the nitty-gritty of knowing who and publishing the results. So there's nobody who is held accountable for instance, you have cleared arrears, by what percentage? You have reduced waiting time, by what percentage? You have reduced the backlog of, by what percentage? Nobody is ever putting that out at all. So there isn't a proper data or reporting of the effort made by public officers to actually reduce the burden for the private sector. And that is a challenge, because if things are not performance-based, then anything goes. My third point would be around data, or maybe not even data, around digitalization. Taiwo talked about the agency that had about 4 websites. There are some that have no websites. Even the website is probably static and nothing happens there. I remember once a member was wondering how to reach out. I think she's done some applications online, and we were trying to think, so how do we move it? And then say, oh, you have to print out what you have done online and bring it to our office. At the end of the day, the private sector were doing double work because things are not digitized. So it's important for us as a nation to think through, how do we bring in technology? How does technology help us in execution? Because if we apply technology, we'll be more efficient in the way we execute. Also, if you apply technology, it is easy to see. I remember when, maybe Mandy will talk a bit about this, when we had the backlog, the FS backlog, oh, it is sitting with CBN. CBN said, no, it's sitting with the Minister of Finance. No, it is with Minister of Justice. So where is it? Who is holding it? And why is it not being released? So sometimes digitized, then it's easy to know where in the system it is residing and who is, responsible for it and who we can hold accountable for it. And if things are also published, if there's a scorecard, then it's easy. And so I'll kind of just round this, the answer to this question up with saying that perhaps we need a centralized way to actually execute or monitor the execution of reforms, where you have performance indicators per agency. So we know what agencies are responsible for which part of this reform. And so it will be easy for everyone to follow through, to monitor. So we're all monitoring, we're all supposed to be monitoring how these things affect us. And we at the chamber, we're also monitoring how it affects the private sector, but we can't monitor without data. And being able to use technology helps us get the data that we want. On the question around climate reporting, and what businesses need to do. So in the past, climate engagement or climate discussions were seen as, let's try and greenwash our position. Let's try and greenwash our image with a reputation management effort. But now it's no more a reputation management effort. Actually, it's an access to market effort. Because if you don't have the right frameworks or the right systems in place to track and to monitor and to report your climate, effort or engagement, then you can't really play within the global supply chain. So today, when you think about this movement, I believe that companies need to align with international standards that will moderate thing or provide the framework necessary report. Key the Reporting Council has said is that the climate or sustainability actions should reside with the board. So the board governance structure of any organization should be the backbone of any kind of reporting. So you need to have the board being conversant with climate issues. Okay, so at the governance level, at the board level, board members must be responsible for climate reporting, climate action, climate data, and they must have the right committees in place, the right committees that will understand that this is a risk, it's a business risk, and it's a strategic risk that they must pay attention to. We need to integrate climate issues within the business because these issues have cost implications. We're all accountants. How are we thinking around the climate capex or the climate OPEX? How are we thinking about it? How are we capturing that data in a way that we can monitor, we can track, we can see how it affects our business, and we can see how it affects our ability to access markets. Today, investors are asking questions. Today, shareholders are more active than they were in the past, and they're going to stringently scrutinize what boards put out there. And boards are personally and collectively liable. So you can't say, oh, is the CFO that's responsible or is the CRO? No, it's the board that is responsible. So board members need to have the right architecture, the right governance architecture in place. Also, and perhaps finally, they need to begin to pull together data. Today, it is not mandatory. It's going to get mandatory very soon. But for now, begin to prepare for it, because if you prepare for it now, it will be easier for you in the future. It will be easier for you when the standards kick in and you really do have to apply and it becomes so stringent because you are prepared. And as you're preparing, you're also building capacity internally with your staff so they understand it and they can, give a narrative around how your business is dealing with it. There are some companies today in Nigeria, some large companies in telecom, in banking, that are already reporting on their climate actions. And it's important for all business leaders to begin to think about it because it's going to become very seriously, a very serious issue in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much for that. Can you hear me? Okay. We now go to the third speaker. If you can restrict your conversations to 5 minutes each, it would be appreciated. The focus here is on accountability, ethics, and quote unquote, the system architect role. And I'm going to invite Mrs. Abimbola Ogundare to address 2 or 3 pertinent questions. One of them is that the accountant is no longer a historian. As your profession moves from reporting the past to assuring complex digital systems, how are ethical frameworks and assurance methodologies evolving to address AI-driven risks, algorithmic bias, and data integrity? That's the first question. Second question has to do with hidden liabilities, because they lie at the core of silent risk. States and local governments increasingly rely on off-budget arrangements. What tools, such as cash flow forecasting, commitment controls, or enhanced disclosures should professional firms prioritize to restore fiscal transparency and prevent future solvency crises? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, and good afternoon, everyone. I stand on existing protocols, and I believe this is a very timely conversation for all of us in the room. We started today by just introspecting and saying, as custodians of reporting, of accountability in the room, what is our contribution to making sure that the outlook is as positive as possible, the fiscal plans and so forth. And the first question around how we as accountants are evolving to make sure that we're able to cover AI-driven risks, biases, and integrity issues in the profession is very important. The traditional accounting as it's seen today, is something that is evolving. The profession itself is going through a transformation. So from looking at reporting as a historic assurance of what was last year, last half year, it is now a situation where we have to look at systems, processes, governance, and give more assurance to the stakeholders to say these are correct. These are the basis on which our companies, our GDP, our economy can be quantified. Therefore, as we can continue to track progress in terms of GDP growth, in terms of fiscal change, and so forth. Now, as a profession, even from an ethical perspective, ISPA, IFAC, they have had to relook the guidelines and the codes that mean how do we as accountants look at transactions and numbers and give assurance. We must pay attention to the human in the loop because AI is a tool. AI is not a decision maker. So where we can use these tools to enhance our reporting, to enhance our systems, we still have the responsibility to understand exactly what is being done, not just from an output perspective to say these are the numbers, but from an input perspective. So now from the perspective of objectivity, we're not just looking to make sure that the inputs are representative of a sample size. We must also see if everybody in the model for a loan impairment ratio is from one local government area, in which case an ethical bias is something that needs to be reported. There's also taking out the black box phenomena of AI, where we as accountants now need to understand exactly what it is we're looking at in the systems. There's data provenance. You want to make sure that as you're looking at the numbers that go into the model, it's the same number that's coming out and giving you a result on which you give an opinion on. And in terms of looking at systems, governance, and data flow, a few things will change around how we do our reporting. Instead of looking at past periods, we will now look at live real-time outputs in our businesses to say, are these representative of what we should be looking at to report at the end of the year? Instead of looking at specific sample sizes that maybe represent 5% of the entire sample, we'll need to say, how can we make sure that everything we're looking at is a representative of what goes into the AI model for reporting? So those are some areas where accountants need to be increasingly digiliterate. It is not enough to rely on the existing skills that have brought us from the past. We're entering into new systems where we will need query the results that systems are giving us, but also take an ethical perspective. These results are representative of the yeses that we give to the numbers in our economy. And I think the second question was around hidden liabilities. So from the perspective of how we can make sure that, especially at the subnational level, we are able to give a full picture of what the budgets and the plans for an economy are. We need to, one, as a fundamental rule, make sure that we are reporting full accrual basis, all obligations, and of course, it wouldn't be from just the primary budget. There are other arrangements. There are PPP arrangements, there are SPVs, there are state-owned enterprises where there may be hidden obligations that are not reported. We have to make sure that there's a central reporting, there's a central contingent and full liability reporting that allows us to see exactly what the quantification of obligations may be from time to time. Something that may also be useful in closing is a predictive dashboard that gives us early warning signs. An early warning sign may be something that says today, I have an obligation, a coupon at 10%. If one of my subnationals defaults on a loan, then my credit rating as a state will change. Therefore, the pricing of my obligations may change. And what does that mean for my total liability reporting? It means that that goes up. So we must make sure that fundamentally the systems are right, full accrual, including contingent hidden liabilities, but also we have the right data to build systems that give us early warning signs and allow us to adjust to additional liabilities not planned. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that incisive commentary. Last but not the least is Mr. Shogun Ajayi-Kadri, who is a good friend of ours. The focus here, or the theme, is productivity, value chains, and inclusive growth. And I have two questions for you. One is universally acknowledged that growth without jobs is politically fragile and has led to countless revolutions around the world from the beginning of time. So with growth still largely job light, how can manufacturers deliberately re-engineer operations toward labor-absorbing value chains, particularly agro-processing, without sacrificing competitiveness? Second question, execution, which I referred to earlier, is the acid test of capital budgets, the efficacy of execution of budgets. If success in 2026 is defined by credible delivery of capital projects, what role can manufacturers play, not just as beneficiaries, but as advocates for disciplined execution of power and transport investments? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not always very easy to be standing between the end of the program and the appetite of people to go to other assignments. So I'll try to be as brief as possible. But I do thank ICAN for the opportunity. I'm not an accountant, but I think, like the chairman of session said, I'm a friend of the house. And I think that any segment of our society, particularly those who play in the economy, that associates with manufacturing is actually focused on a lasting relationship that can bring growth. Because we all suffer from analysis paralysis sometimes. We tend to look at the figures, we focus on what is being said, and like the lead speaker said, we don't keep it simple. Our growth since 2020 has been steady, about 4%, or a little above 4%. But we know that unemployment rates have grown up to 4.6%. So what is growth without jobs? What is growth without increase in prosperity and the livelihood of the people? So I think it also ties down to the issue of accountability. If political leadership is accountable, they will be accountable in the sense that we can measure what they are doing and the impact on the people. But from the manufacturing sector, and I think all of us in this room are aware of how the manufacturing sector has continued to perform. Our contribution to GDP has not been up to 10%. We have also seen an escalation in unplanned inventory, which is what we produce and cannot sell, leading up to 2 trillion across our 10 sectors and 65 subsectors. So when you see this kind of a thing, growth within the sector itself is impaired. But the kind of activities we engage in should be deliberate in such a way that it ties to what the chairman of the session asked. How can we do and inclusive growth. That's the one that creates jobs without compromising competitiveness. Because if you are not competitive as a manufacturer, you are just on your way to the grave, because your goods will continue to lie on the shelves and they will reach expiry life, and you even have to pay NAFDAC and so on to dispose of it. So it becomes toxic to you. So how do we do it? Focusing on our major known areas, which is agriculture. To start with, manufacturers will have to, and we are actually encouraging our members to do so, invest more heavily in the value chain. Because agriculture, for instance, we are producing up to 200 million metric tons of agri products, but we use less than 20 to 30% for processing locally. So we need to expand the activities along the value chain such that we are able to absorb more workers. For instance, we do engage in backward integration to allow farmers, and we support them so that they can grow in number and yield. And then we have people along the value chain, which ties into the transportation that is mentioned, such that we are able to, while sourcing our raw materials locally in terms of backward integration, we're able to create a value chain that infuses job into the equation. We also start to focus on cluster-based value chain, which means that we share infrastructure, we share those facilities that will allow us to be able to scale and expand. Because for manufacturers to be able to create jobs, because it's not a charity organization and it's not a philanthropist, you need to be able to grow in volume, in scale, and also to be able to expand your brand. So if you are able to, for instance, engage in sharing infrastructure, which has been known to reduce costs by about 15 to 25%, you are able to expand, you are able to scale, and you are able to create more jobs. Also, we can engage in modular tax fragmentation. This is actually something I'm very pleased with, because we seek improved technology use, but we know that we need to situate it within the environment in which we operate. If we are going to engage in technology, it should not limit jobs. And I think it's been said here that it may not take away jobs, but it creates an avenue for you to be able to create new vendors for engaging in the process and deepening your capacity to be able to expand in terms of the jobs that you create. There's also the issue of known constraints to manufacturing, because it is important that we recognize that as a nation, manufacturing is a strategic choice. It's not just like any endeavor. It's not just like any endeavor. So government has to be intentional in focusing on what needs to be overcome to allow manufacturing to grow. The last line would be that just yesterday, Nigeria signed an agreement with the UAE. UAE is a country that has set what is called 300 billion to reach 300 billion of their currency by 2031. And that means that they are going to deepen their manufacturing process away from oil. If Nigeria is entering into such a thing, what has Nigeria done to improve its manufacturing? Our contribution to GDP has been below 10%. So we need to be intentional about reducing those burdens, those constraints that have limited the performance of the sector, so that we'll be able to benefit from the agreement. Otherwise, we might just be setting a pace for an overrun on a sector that has suffered decline over the years. I thank you.
To the distinguished panelists, I would like to say a very big thank you for sharing with us your views and perspectives. I've been told, I wanted to shut down this session now, but I've been told that we need to open up for questions. We'll allow 3 questions in the interest of time. And when you are called upon to speak, mention your name, who you work for, and ask your question in a very precise and crisp manner. We are not interested in comments. If you have comments, go online and submit your comments to the Secretariat. So I see a gentleman there raising his hand. And
just
please,
for the directive, the three of you, I think I can see 1, 2. Who's the third person? Please stand up and come. Please, just come forward. It will be more appreciated. Okay, please, the third person, and I'll just take 2 online. The written ones, not you on my on meeting yourself. Yeah. Please, let's adhere to what the chairman said. Your name, where you work, and straight to your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Peter Adebayo is my name. Membership number 28575. With the managing partner of Peter Adebayo and Co-Chartered Accountants. My question straightforward goes to Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. And it centers around the budget for 2026. I want to find out from you, knowing that the budget of 58.18 trillion has a 34 trillion revenue target, which is about 58-something%. That has led to a deficit of 24 trillion to be financed, out of which about 18 trillion will be by debt. What is your committee under your chairmanship doing towards ensuring a decline in dependence on deficit financing as an integral part of our budget system over the years, so that moving ahead, that rate can decline over the years? That's my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. My name is Victor Abejega, membership number 8372. Now, my question is on tax and to Mr. Oyedele. Over the years, we have witnessed a multiplicity of agencies coming to corporate entities to assess the level of tax compliances. And in some cases, they come with even law enforcement agencies. I want to ask, with the new tax laws, is it going to stop? Is it going to limit the administration and collection of taxes to Nigerian Revenue Services, or is it going to continue?
Thank you. My name is Tunde Oloye. My number is 17951. I'm the head of tax management, Fidelity Bank. I have some questions here for Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. In truth, the Tax Reform Committee meant well for Nigeria. However, we know that this law will be run by overzealous tax officials. And I think that is why we have this public cry, particularly when the law asks that tax ID or NIN has to be linked with a bank accounts, which is first time in the country. Please, and up to now, sorry, in the last 6 months,
ask your question.
That we have had this law passed.
You will ask your question and you'll only ask one question.
Okay, sir. None of these operators, I mean tax authorities, have issued policy documents how this law will be run. This is the fear people have, you know, and because of this tax ID that will be linked with bank accounts, then I want to ask this question, sorry. there's a lot of tax benefits to SME. There's this concern for most of the SME that are enterprise and ventures. These benefits are not applicable to them, and we don't have public policy documents, for instance, or companies with turnover of less than 100 million will be exempted. What about ventures? Business ventures, individuals, we know they will be taxed under personal income tax. What benefits do they have under this tax law? Thank you.
Thank you very much. With the permission of the chairman, we have these two online questions directed to Professor Yedele. And the first one is, hello. Yeah, thank you. The first one is the 500,000 rent relief introduced under the Nigerian Tax Act 2025 has attracted significant public interest. Is this relief automatic for all qualifying employees, or is it conditional on employer structuring payroll treatment or specific documentation and claim processes? That is the question from one of the online participants. The second one is they want to know the Nigerian Revenue Services. Have we consolidated all the revenue collection agency to be working under NRS, or we still have them split? And by extension, the person said for the informal sector, a lot of people taking levies will be taken off the road. How far have we gone? Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you very much for those questions. The first one from Mr. Peter Adebayo, budget 2026, and the issues around deficits, financing, and what are we doing to bring that down. So first and foremost, Nigeria's budget is very small. I know people have concerns about waste, corruption, but if you eliminate waste, corruption, we're still a very poor country. The budget is too small. So the tax reform will not fix that problem in 1 year. So it will be progressive. And we have been making that progress. As of 2022, the revenue that we used to service debts was about 97%, almost all our revenue. So by last year, that amount has come down to below 60%. So while these numbers you gave look big, within the context of the economy and the progress we see in the coming years, is not a big issue. To be honest, if we can focus and shift our attention from concerns about borrowing to what we apply the money for. I have this concept about net financial position. If net financial position for Nigeria anytime we borrow is positive, we should borrow even more. Because it means that you borrowed $1 billion, it generates value of more than 1 billion. That's how wealth is created. So yeah, that's the best I can give in terms of the answer to that. The next one from Victor. Multiplicity of agencies going to corporate entities to do tax audits. Would that stop under this new law? The answer is yes, but it will take time. So we used to have EFCC who come and do audits. We have RAMFA who come and do audits. In fact, National Assembly was doing audits.
Yes.
And some of these agencies, when they do the audit, they have the account where you pay. So when you finish paying FRSA, they have not seen it. And then you can't even get credit for it. So that's not the way to run an economy. So we have done two things. In the new tax law, we've put an overriding clause that says no one else can do audits and that around tax other than the tax authority. Number two, we have sent a proposal to the National Assembly to amend the Constitution. Because, for example, RAMFAC is stated in the Constitution, we think their role should be clear and they should not be doing audits. So answer is legal framework has been provided. We need to operationalize it. Then the next one is from Tunde, a friend from Fidelity Bank. Say some officers are overzealous. They're like that everywhere in the world, even in the private sector. Some bank officers are overzealous. Some of them are not. I'm not making excuses for anyone, but let's not overgeneralize. So the linking of bank account to tax ID is not new. It was introduced in 2020. Took effect on the 13th, I'll tell you the precise date, 13th of January 2020. It came into effect. That if you have a bank account that you use for generating income or doing business, you must link it to tax identification number. What the new law has done is to not insist on TIN. So we use the nomenclature tax identification, because the intention is we can use anything that is unique to you to give you a number. You know, before you have to apply for TIN. Under the new law, the taxman can give you TIN without you applying. So everyone in Nigeria that has an NIN now has a TIN. All that you need to do is go and retrieve it. You can do it in less than 5 minutes. Go to GRB website, put your NIN to tell you what your TIN is. We don't call it TIN anymore, tax ID. So if you link it to your bank account, it changes nothing. It's not the reason why they'll take money from your account, right? So it is not correct to say because of this tax ID, something happened to your bank account. Those are just content creators creating panic unnecessarily. The essence of it is to harmonize your identity and the data about you. And it's not just about collecting taxes. If we do this well, there were countries during COVID-19, they could identify who was poor without going to ask them in villages. They credited their accounts. Those who have phone numbers, they gave them food stamp. Because the most reliable information in the world is the taxman data, because it's real. So let's work together to make this possible for our country. The other point you made is that SMEs are not registered with CAC as limited liability company are left out in this benefit. That's not exactly correct. The definition in the two tax laws, you see NTA talks about a small company. NCAA talks about a small business. The intention is that the definition should be the same. And what that means is if you have a small business and is limited with CAC, you don't pay CIT because it's 0%. You're exempted from charging VAT, charging withholding tax being deducted on you. But if you don't have a company that is registered as limited, but it's just an enterprise or a venture, you are still entitled to not charging VAT, no withholding tax. But because CIT is not applicable to you, it's meaningless when they say your CIT is 0% when you don't pay CIT. You pay personal income tax. We're working on a presumptive tax regulation whereby we'll categorize these enterprises by their turnover threshold. The original idea is that if your turnover in a year is 12 million naira or less, you should pay 0 personal income tax. Because when you do business, 12 million is not the money that belongs to you. It is your turnover. Then above 12 million all the way to 100 million, you have different percentage. We're even playing with something like 1% of your turnover, nothing more than that. So because we want to make life easier for these small businesses, many of them are just struggling to survive. Now, in addition to that, many of you would have seen the Supreme Court said it was wrong for the National Assembly to enact a law and say these are approved levies of taxes and collection and blah, 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 that they have no such authority. These new tax laws have now repealed the list of approved taxes and levies acts. It no longer exists as we speak now. What we then did was to draft a tax harmonization law for subnationals to enact for themselves. We sent this to them, and I have been personally very impressed with the speed of progress we have seen. From Kwara State to Ekiti State to Zamfara State to Kano, they are enacting these laws for themselves to say we'll no longer collect all these multiple taxation. We'll outlaw cash collection. Nobody will collect cash tax from you anymore. Outlaw also the use of roadblocks to collect taxes with nails, throwing it up and down, beating people up. We are better than that as a country. So this is one of the progress we said we shouldn't stop it. You know, when people said there were alterations in the law, and I said, I just hope that someone somewhere with the right authority will use the opportunity of these allegation of alteration to the tax law to look for the fire and put it out rather than chasing the smoke. 3 senior advocates of Nigeria, including a former NBA president, said to me that there are 3 versions of the Constitution. You know, so this is a problem with the process. Quality assurance, accountability, let's fix it. For the people online, one question is, this 500,000 rents, how is it going to be administered? Would it be automatic for all employees? Would it be based on the pay structure if you have rent allowance there? Or would it be that you need to bring receipts? The idea behind this 500,000 I already explained to you is for the urban poor. But we couldn't discriminate because that would be unconstitutional, so everybody can claim it. How it will be claimed so that the process is not too cumbersome is still being worked out with the Joint Revenue Board. We have some drafts we haven't finalized, which goes into the last question that says, would all revenue collection be consolidated under NRS? The answer is yes, but that process has only just started. And then the question is, they haven't even issued all these guidelines. That is true. Our plan in an ideal world was for all these regulations, guidelines, public notices to be ready like 3 months before December, because we want people to give their feedback, debate it, finalize, and gazette. But in our real world, it did not happen like that. And I speak to you, as I speak to you today, we have more than 40 regulations, guidelines, and public notices that have been finalized. But we can't release a single one of them because we're still waiting for what is the final version of the gazette. You know why? Because the Authentication Act says whatever the government printer publishes is the evidence of the law that was passed. That government printer published something which we shared, and we said this is the official version. Lawmakers said it's not what they passed. So they said they would do their own gazette. They set up their committee, they did their own review, they did their own gazette. They sent me a copy, soft copy. But that's not what the Authentication Act says. So I sent my staff, go to government printer and go and buy. They went there as of last week, they said it's not ready, that they should wait. So I also told everybody, the NRS, GRB, you to wait, because we can't issue guidelines when we are not 100% certain that this is the final official position. I called my staff this morning, I said, go back there, be following up every day, go there, don't call them, go and sit down there. And I got feedback as I was here that says that, I don't even know whether I should say this one because I don't know what the press will report. But in the interest of accountability and transparency, so my staff told me that they said everything that they printed, the National Assembly collected from them and said they shouldn't sell to anyone, that they want to complete their review. While that is good, it also creates the uncertainty again. So in other words, what I'll say to you is, the explanation we have provided about the law, because all this issue of they've altered, they've not altered, it's not even a lot. There are few items that shouldn't affect the main thing that people need to, nothing about the tax rate, about the tax burden, the filing deadline. So, but this is the best I can say to you as we speak. Hopefully we can get over this sooner rather than later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Taiwo Yedele, for those responses to the question from the participant. On this note, let me yield the floor to the chairman of session as he gives his closing remark before we have the vote of thanks from our vice president. Alhaji Mohammed Hayatu, you have the floor for your closing remarks.
It is not my intention to flog you any further, but just a couple of closing comments. One is to say that broadband, power, and infrastructure are the triggers, major triggers for quantum jump on your economic trajectory in terms of economic development. So what I would say to Taiwo is that he should do everything within his sphere of influence to get the government to understand and to prioritize these three areas. Once you have broadband in all of the local governments of this country, you have critical infrastructure that are important for moving things around the country, both people and goods, and that you have power. I assure you, as Malaysia has done, as Indonesia and other countries have done, that you can actually triple our GDP growth in no time. So that's the first point. The second point is to say that I'm deeply frightened about the state of our world today. I can see signs of strength is might, people throwing their weight around. And what led to the First and the Second World Wars was the age of empires and imperialism. If such a monster is allowed to travel around the world, then I think all of us are going to be in trouble. Why do I say this? Because you people are specialized in the game of numbers, and your projections and your assumptions can easily be thrown overboard. So I reiterate the first point I made, that it is important to understand the kind of forces and trends that are actually reshaping our world today, and to take heed and powerful lessons from that kind of thing. For example, I run an oil and gas company. We study what is going on from before Venezuela to even now. The idea being that under the United States administration, they want to go back to fossil fuel, produce it in superabundance, both directly and through powers of coercion, by beating up countries, expand output, and collapse prices. I don't have to say any more to you, you're very enlightened. What does that mean for Nigeria when commodity prices are tanking? We had to remodel only last week to begin to look at $50 barrel. At that kind of pricing level, many junior E&P companies will actually be making losses from 80 to 70 to 60 and possibly now 50 if these projections are to hold. Nigeria needs to look at, re-examine its cash flow, its balance sheet, and carry out sensitivity analysis around certain variables. There is more I could say, but I'm not interested in taking any more of your time because I'm speaking to a deeply enlightened audience. I would just like to say that I thoroughly enjoyed this session over a period of 3.5 hours. I would like to pay special tribute to Taiwo for doing such a fantastic job. And our highly able and competent discussants. And then to you, the audience, I know there will be a vote of thanks, but to you, the audience, you are superstars. And Mr. President, I thank you.
Let's make it better and bigger for the chairman of session, Alhaji Muhammad Hayatuddin, the chairman, Alpine Investment Services Limited. Not in my position to thank you, but let me invite who has actually been statutorily, given the right to do the vote of thanks. And on that note, let me invite the vice president of our great institute and the chairman, 60th Anniversary Planning Committee, who have put this together, person of Ajia Queensley. Sofaratus Egosime MNI FCA, as she gives
Thank you very much, everyone. The 61st President and Chairman of Council of ICAN, Malam Haruna Mayaya, MNI PhD FCA, the Chairman Body of Past Presidents, Sir Hugh Agbebiyi, FCA, the Chairman of Session, Alhaji Muhammad Hayatuddin, the first and second Deputy Vice Presidents of ICAN, members of Council, the Registrar and Chief Executive, our distinguished keynote speaker and panelists, traditional rulers here present, esteemed professional colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is with deep appreciation I thank you all for being part of this January 2026 Economic Outlook, organized as part of activities marking the 60th anniversary of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. We are grateful to participants present here and those who joined us virtually for contributing meaningfully to this very important national conversation. I sincerely thank the 61st President and Chairman of Council of ICAN, Malam Haruna Mayaya, MNI PhD FCA, for his exemplary leadership and support as we commemorate this historic milestone. Our appreciation also goes to the chairman of the session, Alhaji Muhammad Hayatuddin, for honoring our invitation and for his thoughtful and effective stewardship of today's proceedings. I extend our special and heartfelt appreciation to our keynote speaker, Professor Taiwo Oyedele, FCA, Chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms. At a critical moment in Nigeria's fiscal reform journey, we deeply appreciate your exceptional service to our country. Despite the weight of your national responsibilities, you find time to engage with ICAN and to enrich this forum with clarity, depth, and purpose. I also thank our distinguished panelists, Dr. Biodun Adedipe, Dr. Chinyere Almona, Mrs. Abimbola Ogundare, and Mr. Shegun Ajayi Kadiri, MNI, for their insightful contributions, which greatly enriched our deliberations. My gratitude extends to the body of past presidents, members of the Executive Committee of Council, ICAN Council, and the 60th Anniversary Committee, and of course, the ICAN Secretariat, ably led by Mr. Larry Olasukomi, PhD, FCA, and your dedication, professionalism, and steadfast support. Thank you all for your presence and participation. I trust that we leave here today, not only with engaging discussions behind us, but with renewed and resolved practical insights to help build the Nigeria we all deserve. God bless you all. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and God bless the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Vice President and the Chairman of the Planning Committee. We quickly want to take a photograph session. Permit me to invite the Presidency to join the Chairman and the panelists to take the first set of photographs, and thereafter we'll invite our royal fathers that are very much present here. It will be very brief, but just let's do that as fast as possible. The photographers, please be on standby so that we'll quickly take this. Registrar Chief, okay, you're already here. So please, let's arrange them accordingly. Yeah, after this, the presidency will stay. The royal fathers should please join them. Okay, thank you very much. Our royal fathers, please. The photographs are in session. Everybody definitely will have a session here this afternoon. Hold on. We have after this session, the rest of us can take a seat except the presidency. And let me welcome the council members that are very much present here. Presidency and the council members. Okay. Please, our resource person, if very much around, still please join them for this session. We can't take you out. Pardon me, ma. After this, after the council members, our past president very much present here, please. We will also need you to take photographs. Our past president very much present here. After the past president, let the past registrars be getting ready. Past registrars after the past presidents. Thank you, our council members. We appreciate you. Resource person, you can go. Resource person have been told will be part of all the session. All the resource person will be part of the photographs. Oh yeah, please, let's take that of the past president. And please, representative of the professional bodies, presidents, registrars of other professional bodies, please let's be on standby after the registrars. Representative of other professional bodies very much present here. Representative of other professional bodies while we await the past registrars. And finally, the head of institutions, my UBA Oga. I thank you very much for staying back with us. All the representative of ANAN, CIBN, MOID, After this professional body, past registrars, and finally head of institutions, CBN, NDIC, the registrars, whether past or current of ICAN, take with the presidency. So past registrars, please, let's take a picture. Registrar, join them. All head of parastatals, representative of parastatals, please, let's come even for the photographs too. So the final one, the representative of institutions. Thank you very much, our past registrars. Thank you very much. Okay, please, the UBA, please join them. My president, that's the representative of GMD. And finally, the technical, please, let's have the ICAN anthem and the national anthem. ICAN anthem and the national anthem. Please, let's be upstanding for the anthems, please.
Lord, I can found a treasure in triumph of an race, standing stronger in harmony, building our land together. Dreams of our founding fathers, we are striving to attain our hopes and values that we share. Through all ages we sustain. Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. No like your accuracy we cherish. We uphold your integrity.
The national anthem.
Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native land. Though tribe and tongue may differ, in brotherhood we stand. Nigerians home and proud to serve our sovereign fatherland.
Thank you very much for coming. My president, may I humbly invite all the students